Welcome to episode 25 of the Coast AFL Podcast with Nick and Blaze. This week, we honour the currently announced retirees of the 2024 season, obviously being Dustin Martin, Tom Hawkins, and Andrew Gaff, even though Andrew Gaff is still playing the rest of the season out. We also look at a couple of very interesting upsets this week. Brisbane and GWS at the Gabba, a game I was at. Geelong and Freo. The spoon bowls in both Richmond and St.Kilda and West Coast and North Melbourne were both the latter more interesting than the former, but it's still very interesting to talk about in terms of the wide impact overall, especially going into the draft season, and much more. So please come along with us as we get started. How are you doing, Mr. Cyric?
Yeah, not too bad. Sort of still getting into the groove of things after being sick, but yeah, as I said, so a bit of a sleepy week, but again, brilliant round of football. Yeah, as I said, it was just a bit of a tipping nightmare, though.
It was.
I mean, yeah, as I said, I think I did fairly well out of it. I think I got 5.
Yeah,
you got
we both got
4 or
5.
5?
No,
Yeah,
we both got 5.
but,
Yeah, in both of my comps, no one got higher than 6.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
pretty hard.
So, congratulations if anyone did good. But yeah, I'm also keen to have a bit of a budget talk to start off with, talking about the retarees.
Yeah. So, do you wanna just start with the greatest of all time?
I guess.
Well, I mean, may as well.
No. Yeah.
I have the article up already. So we're gonna talk about Dusty. You know, the king of finals, one of the greatest players the game has ever seen, and the stats don't lie. SEN had created a brilliant article all about stuff that he has achieved over his career, his 15-year career, might I add. Not to mention, it's his final statistics as well, being one of the best big game players of the current era, in fact of all time according to statistics. So there were 69 times in a game he had 20 plus disposals and 2 goals, which is like astounding just on its own, because there aren't that many players who've done that. Obviously Gary Ablett Jr. and Patrick Dangerfield were 2 notable superstars that have done something like that before. He's the leader in broken tackles with 377 over a 15-year campaign. Jack Viney is the closest with 213. When he's played inside 50, he's been the best forward 50 target in 15 years, because they've scored a goal 30% of the time he's had the ball inside 50, which is also just a huge statistic. Even though it might be a low percentage number, it's still just massive overall. He's the number 1 rated player on the ground for 5 consecutive matches from the 2020 final series into 2021. The only other player that has done that is Patrick Dangerfield. His 2017 grand final is the second highest rated grand final of all time. The number 1 is Luke Shuey's 2018 grand final against Collingwood, which, pretty insane grand final that was on its own.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, those wouldn't have been recorded since 2011, I think. Champion
Champion data statistics are certainly more recent.
I mean, in modern era, it's pretty fantastic.
Especially when you've seen how the game has evolved, even just in the past 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, you'd put it up there anyway. It's just, yeah, as I said. But yeah, as I said, not to neglect the finals performances before that, but yeah, Dusty's would be up there on any list.
And then his 2020 grand final comes up with the 6th best grand final, but that was also with shortened quarters. But if you extrapolate that into like a full game, it'd supposedly be the 2nd best grand final in terms of his performance. The 2019 grand final came out as the 12th best grand final. And overall, he's been the number 1 rated player on the ground 6 times from 16 grand finals. So 16 finals series, I should say. So it's,
I was going to say.
Qualifier, semi, prelim, and grand final. He's the only player that has done that. And for a while, will probably continue to hold that record.
Yeah, because it's a very hard one to beat, because obviously you have to be in a dynasty side to do that. So also credit for Richmond for being able to let him get those big stats. But yeah, as I said, is I wouldn't even say opportunist because he creates moments.
Yeah,
There's no
absolutely.
doubt about that.
There were definitely times where he won a game off of his own boot, and
Yeah, exactly.
I think the 2020 grand final is definitely one of those.
Yeah.
Four
And
goals.
as like personally, I think his 2017 season is probably the one of the greatest individual seasons of all times.
Hmm.
I was talking about it before. Just I think the biggest switch for me from like him being a really good player to superstar, which probably happened about maybe 2014, 2015, I would say, off
Yeah,
the top of
when
my
we
head.
started making finals campaigns, but still weren't exactly
Yeah,
100% in it either.
was just the amount of impact his disposals would get. Because I had started playing Supercoach at that time, people were wary of lower disposal players. But Dustin Martin was someone you could always rely on because a lot of his possessions
Hmm.
turned into goals. I said to Blaze, like 2017, he had 9 score involvements per game, which I think is pretty insane. Like I couldn't find anyone, even the full forwards who could kick a bag. I couldn't find anyone approaching. Well, I can find a few people approaching 9, which we'll talk about next.
Hmm.
But I couldn't find anyone higher. So, yeah. But as I said, he could do that, but from the midfield, he could move forward. He was so adjustable. And yeah, as I said, that consistency, like before, as I mentioned, he would seem to go in and out of games. But once he found his rhythm, yeah, there was no real stopping him. And
Yeah,
like, it was so good from early because this year is actually his worst disposal year.
this year was
His
his
debut
worst
year.
year in general because every game that he played, he lost.
Yeah, well, I mean, they were just better in 2011. I think they were coming off a pretty bad season
We
then. I
weren't a
can't
two
remember.
win team. We still had more wins in 2011 than we do now.
Yeah. But yeah, well, that's it. That's the unfortunate of that. But yeah, as I said, there's no doubt, it's true champion of the game, as you mentioned. The fend off, it's funny because I'll probably talk about dual forward threats with Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins,
Hmm.
but what about the dual fend off threats with of course one of the fan favorites, push up
Jake Push Up
what was
King,
his name?
Jake King.
Push Up King, Jake King, and Dustin Martin, two of the bit hardest bodies going into midfield.
Absolutely.
So yeah, as I said, lots of fun memories of him. I know you obviously have more particular and fonder memories. But
Yes, I
yeah,
do.
absolute
So
legend.
I was at two of the grand finals. It was very thrilling experience. I was also at the unfortunate prelim in 2018 where we lost to Collingwood, but
Yeah,
I'm grateful the West Coast beat
I
them.
met. Yeah, exactly. Um, but
Shall
yeah, no,
we
it's probably
shall we move on to Tom
oh, yeah.
Hawkins?
Yeah, for sure. Well, do you want to do the stats rundown
I haven't actually been able to
or
find any sort of like succinct
yeah, okay,
statistical
I
rundown.
can take this
So if
one
you want to go
because,
for it.
um, yeah, I'll take this one. Like, because I grew up starting to pay attention at the start of Tom Hawk's career, and it was actually pretty iffy at the start. I mean, Geelong obviously coming off their 2 premierships at the time, and not 2, sorry, 1, 2 finals, I meant. Um, and yeah, it was just like they were trying to fit someone in the forward line. I think it was like Max Rook, someone else. And yeah, Tom Hawkins, he didn't really look a part of it. And a lot of people were thinking, he wouldn't fit in the system. He wasn't strong enough. And, unfortunately back in those days, him being a bit pretty, sort of, went against him a bit. But, you can't actually deny a lot of his grit and a lot of his effort because once he was in the side, he was quite amazing.
Hmm.
Obviously, his goal kicking ability, second to none. But the biggest thing, well, I should say goal kicking ability in 2014 and 2012, he kicked 2.8 goals per game. 2018, he kicked 2.9 goals per game. I don't. Did he win a Coleman?
Yes, he
I
has
don't
won
think
a
he ever.
Coleman. I don't know if he's won
Yes.
multiple, but I don't know which year it was.
Yeah.
Give me a second, I can find it.
Um, Yeah, sorry, I should have put. Yeah, I don't really follow individual medals as much, but what I will say is the evolution from about probably 2016 onwards, he started becoming a lot more higher distribution forward.
There we go. He won. Sorry
In
to interrupt. He won the 2020 Coleman Medal.
2020, that's all right. Okay. Yeah, because obviously just 2.3 goals per that season, but obviously in the shortened quarters. Um, but yeah, as I said, one of the biggest things again is his distribution. He's one of, in terms of goal assists, he is, I think, the best tall forward with 0.7 goals assists per game. So just under one, but Cyril Rioli tops that at 0.9. So it is a stat that, yeah, the closer you are to one, you can go obviously, no one has, but yeah, it's pretty good. And what was I going to say? Oh, score involvements. The 2022 season, I think one of the most underrated seasons in terms of, you know, individual performance. 8.7 score involvements per game as a tall forward. He Cameron, who scored 7. Um, so,
Oh, oh,
sorry,
you good?
just a little bit of an error there. Yeah, I'm good. So yeah, yeah. So sharing it with Jeremy Cameron, was able to generate so much score in a season which had a lot of eyebrows on Geelong with their recruiting strategies, but paid off dividends. They go on to win the grand final that year. And yeah, as I said, he's an absolute star. He only got smarter as the years went on. And his durability for a key forward shouldn't be overlooked. Like, he's played so many finals, but he has had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 seasons of 20 games or more. 119, 18 seasons. And this season will be his lowest on 12. Sorry, not including his rookie years.
Oh yeah, of course.
So yeah. So yeah, very durable. And yeah, absolute Cats legend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he will definitely go down as one of the all-time greats. Fair chance he will probably be put into the AFL Hall of Fame in like at some
I
point
would
as
say
well,
undoubtedly.
alongside Dustin Martin, of course. Um,
Mm.
yeah, his overall impact at Geelong was absolutely massive, and like from the pretty much from the very beginning, because he's a dual premiership winner now,
Mm.
and yeah, just having that evolution as a tall forward, which is something hard to do. Just developing as a tall player is one of the hardest roles to develop, like
Yeah,
especially if,
exactly.
like from
And
ruck at tall forwards, tall defenders. Really,
yeah, and
really
that's what I
difficult
want to
because of
bring
different
up the
body
start
sizes.
because, I mean, we've seen a lot of tall forwards in the system this year who have struggled. And I think, a lot of them will be trying to look at the career of Tom Hawkins to figure out, like, how can I, even if I'm struggling, bring the most to my team and, cement that prospect of being a longevity, having a long career, while still always consistently producing, which Tomo Hawkins, as I said, despite his slow is pretty harsh considering he's just a young kid at the time, into, yeah, one of the best careers as a modern tall forward that you can have.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, shall we move on to Andrew Gaff, even though he is still currently playing?
Yeah. So Gaffey's career hasn't quite wrapped up. And it's, look, statistically wise, it's not really comparable to either of the two. I would say his best was very good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also underrated how much he contributed to the Eagles' attack. Obviously, the Eagles had one of the best attack for the mid 2000, and the midfield always just had to do their job to get it going. And I think that's what made Andrew Gaff so reliable. Obviously, for a bit of the 2000s, you had people like Matt Prittis also, who were able to get the bulb. And once they were able to dish it up to Andrew Gaff, he was able to consistently find targets up forward. Again, he was very consistent with his score involvements, inside 50s, and he was just very good uncontested. He was a very good user of the ball. And yeah, as I said, yeah, he's sort of, yeah, as I said, I think also the other thing is his consistent run at the time.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of times where the Eagles midfield was thought to be a bit too slow to compete, that they might drag him down. But Andrew Gaff, yeah, was one of those players that, you know, was always running, was always presenting up opportunities for, you know, players to dish to him so he can move it forward.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, as I said, like, I don't think he's obviously as elite. I doubt he would get into the AFL Hall of Fame. 279 games, though, is a very long career. And yeah, as I said, he's honestly is one of the more reliable, like, I would say A minus, but that's pretty harsh. He's an A player. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, you know, as I said, one of the, compared to any player's career, like, you would take Andrew Gaff's career in a heartbeat and more. So,
I mean, he still
yeah,
has some
congratulations to him.
fairly decent accolades in his career. He was a nominee for the Rising Star in his debut year, 2011. He won the John Worsfold Medal in 2015, their best and fairest. He was All-Australian twice in 2015 and 2018. Eagles Life member in 2017. And also the second place, or the runner-up, for the John Worsfold Medal in 2020 as well. So, you know, decent accolades in a fairly substantial career.
Yeah, exactly. And look, he pretty much averaged 30 disposals for a 5-year stretch, or 6-year actually, which is always very hard to do. But yeah, as I said, unfortunately, once that dropped off, you know, your speed slides has died down. He did taper off a lot more quickly, but it's important not to forget how good he was for that stretch for the Eagles, and a very important part for their premiership, or the only, well, their premiership in that time period. So, yeah, I think, yeah, so I feel like I'm underselling it, but it's so hard when you're comparing him to, again, Tom Hawkins.
Yeah, when you look at Hawkins and Dustin Martin, he is
Dustin Martin.
definitely a bit lower rated, but, you know,
Yeah,
fairly commendable season, despite a couple of issues that he has had in a past couple of years.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes you just don't get to control the end of your season. I mean, even same with Tomahawk, in a way. So, as I said, I think for all these players, it's the right time to move on for them. And, you know, it will be nice to wish them well. Yeah, so Gaff gets to play one final home game.
Yeah, I believe
this week.
This week is their last home game, and then they play away for the round 24.
I think he's confirmed he's not going to Cardinia Park, which is probably fair enough. So yeah, as I said, yeah.
Oh yeah, he doesn't want to get in the way of Tom Hawkins' celebrations.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, absolutely. All three fantastic careers, and yeah, we're monumentally proud of what they've been able to achieve.
Absolutely. All right, with that out of the way, let's jump into this week's games. And I've got the first one, the Friday night clash at the SCG. Before we actually start this, I want to so I read an article just before where Laura Kane kind of said a couple of words to Craig McRae about his comments about home field advantage, because this was at the MCG and said it might have been a different outcome if it was played on the MCG. And I think it's because Horse said something like in his presser, and Fly kind of replied saying like, "You forget that I played for Brisbane. I know what it's like to struggle to win interstate." Something like that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny moment, because look, I'm gonna be honest, like, Fly just got caught out in the press conference, you know, like, he was a bit mad about the lack of the 50. it happens, but because I think it was there, like absolutely. But you know what I mean? It's just like heat of the moment. Like you do so many of those presses, you're going to say something a bit loose, which he has. But yeah, as I said, it's just like one of the worst moments for him because this season has been very highlighted about some of the home ground advantages team have, some of the scheduling, obviously
Gold Coast
due to
Suns.
stuff like yeah. Well, yeah, gather round and opening round especially as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, even the Gold Coast, as I said, like if they had as many games that People's First as Collingwood had at the G, they would probably have made the finals by now. Like, there's no doubt about it.
But it's also
just
like
win
we
an extra few
go
games.
through this conversation every year. It's like how many tenants are at the MCG? There's like 6 teams.
Yeah.
And like it's the same with Marvel. There's like the 4 other Melbourne-based teams that predominantly play there, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and then it's 2 per state. So apart from Gold Coast and Brisbane and GWS and Sydney.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, so like I'm not mad. Like I feel weird like all this anger's going towards McRae when really it's just like an AFL issue. Like McRae's not gonna go, just for equality, we're going to sell some of our home games to play away. Like, no, that's never going to happen. Why would they?
Absolutely not.
Collingwood would get treated with the silver spoon, but why would they do anything about it? Like,
granted, Hawthorn and North Melbourne did that for Tassie, and now we're getting a team in Tassie. So that side's very beneficial.
Yeah, a tiny bit different.
Yeah, and like GWS sell games to Canberra to promote the game in there. That's a good thing as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes we go up to Darwin, we go to Alice Springs.
Yeah.
To promote
we're
the game
talking about
areas,
a big top 4 team.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the times where Richmond have travelled was probably started when they were a lot lower on the ladder. I think it started like 2007-ish, 2009-ish when they were a bit
when we were still pretty bad.
Yeah, so they built the connection up that way, but as I said, it's just whatever. But it was a funny way to end it. You'll probably get onto it, but as I said, just sort of funny, really. It's just it's gonna rag on Collingwood sometimes.
It's always fun to rag on Collingwood. I just wish that our former coaches weren't coaching them.
Yeah, well, I said I didn't really put much on McRae. He just slipped.
No.
It happens.
Fly's a good man, and so is Leper.
I would hate to do so many press conferences. I would say so much stupid things.
Well, I mean, speaking of the game itself, though, it was insanely close going up to that last quarter. Game finished overall 13-11, 89 to 12-14, 86. Absolutely thrilling final quarter. I did manage to actually catch it when I landed in Brisbane. I ended up going back on the replay for it. It was brilliant to watch. Insane. And a complete thriller. And with the Swans taking away this victory at the SCG, they finally booked their tickets to September. It's officially confirmed. They're playing finals.
1 of 4. Yep.
It was a long road for them. They were very 50-50 going to the second half of the season.
Something that could have happened a few weeks ago.
It should have happened a few weeks ago, but
it made it interesting.
Absolutely, definitely. Well, I mean, the rest of the season's still pretty interesting. 2 rounds to go. No one else is locked in.
Yeah. No, 4 teams are locked in.
You sure?
Yeah, the top 4 can't drop out, can they?
Maybe. We'll look at the ladder. We'll look at the ladder and figure it out in a minute. Anyway. So let's run down some players, some statistics, and it's honestly, to give Sydney some credit, they managed to get Isaac Heaney free from a tag, and he just managed to do his own thing for most of the night, which is crazy to watch. Which makes sense because I think they would have had to tag predominantly on Golden because Golden is also insane. You got to try and shut him down.
Yeah,
but they let Heaney just do what he wants.
I wouldn't say it was like a dual tag situation, but it was interesting because Sidebottom went on Eric Golden, and he really shut him down. Like, obviously, Sidebottom's not a pure tagger, but with his run and his pressure,
he did. Golden only had 1 disposal up until the second half of the second quarter.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it was huge, and like a lot of your Sydney plays, even Isaac Heaney was very back half heavy. The
Absolutely.
impact they were able to get was still huge.
For sure. So Heaney himself finished with 32 disposals, 15 contested possessions, 9 inside 50, 7 clearances, 8 score involvements, but only a 1-3 scoreline. Silly man. He missed 3 important goals. Could have been a bigger margin. But
I was a
they
bit
still
like that for Sydney.
they take away the 4 points, lock themselves in. You take that anyway.
Yeah.
Whether they stay first on the ladder, that still remains to be seen. That is still volatile.
Yeah, exactly. And look, as I said, it was a good victory for Sydney, and their midfield clicking is really good. But yeah, their one-on-one defensive efforts, it was still lacking. Obviously 12-14 to one of the more mediocre offenses, and you can see it all night. Obviously, it's a bit weird because you got players like Jake Lloyd, who has shifted more from defense to the wing. But yeah, it's a bit hard because it's like, well, he's doing all right there, but it's definitely Sydney looked a lot better when he shifted back. I think Dane Rampy's still a bit settling in. I think
He was out
this
for a
was
while with injury. This is his second game back.
yeah, second game back. Seemed to be struggling a bit one-on-one. And yeah, Tom McCartan too. Had pretty little impact to the game, I
Callum
think.
Mills is having similar issues as well. He's still trying to find his footing again after being out for ages.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, he was sort of rotating on the wing. They had a lot of sort of rotation on the outside. Obviously Errol being the mainstay, but yeah, as I said, it was just it seemed like a team finding its footing in terms of that. But yeah, from what they were able to do forward of the ball, when they did get the game on their terms, more than made up for it.
Absolutely. And Nick Blakey was a very important cog for that, especially across half back. He collected 24 disposals, 6 intercepts, 7 marks, 3 score involvements, 10 1%ers, a lowly behind, with 557 meters gained. He was a huge ball carrier coming out of that back half.
Yeah, and I think actually Nick Blakey, I was going to say it before, he epitomized like what I'm saying about this. Like his forward efforts, some of the best in the game. Unfortunately, his defensive effort, because he was playing a bit back, he got beaten a lot. So it's one of those things. McStay got the better of him, but as I said, what they're able to generate off offense, like while they are struggling, will probably make up for it. Because as I said, they've just got a lot of things to tighten up back there. But yeah, as I said, once that's able to happen, again, Nick Blakey continuing his fantastic season.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm just going to shout out Chad Warner. He definitely lifted really, really, really massively in the second half when things got really hard for them. He finished with 33 touches at 75.8% efficiency, 13 contested possessions, 8 clearances, 8 score involvements, 20 pressure acts, and 2 goals. Massive impact from the young man.
Yeah, a lot of midfielders playing forward that had a huge week, and I think Chiwana was probably the most impressive. Off the top of my head, I'll say it, but we're also talking about it right now, so I might change my mind later. But yeah, he was fantastic.
And then just to shout out some Collingwood players who fought valiantly, gave it their all, as most of them always do. Darcy Cameron, absolutely dominant in the ruck battle. 25 hitouts with 9 to advantage and 19 disposals at 78.9% efficiency, 15 contested possessions, 8 intercepts, 7 marks, 7 clearances, 7 score involvements, and a goal off his own boot as well. Very, very much a strong, well-rounded ruck battle. And, getting the better of Grundy is like, it's pretty hard to do. So credit all to him.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, yeah, so Grundy still had okay stats, but again, this is just one of those things where, Grundy does always well around the ground, so limiting his direct tap. He had 5 free kicks against him. Cameron winning 3 of those. So, yeah, as I said, it was, yeah, actually, that's just a lot of ticky-tack free kicks. I remember there was, yeah, Isaac Heaney got 5 free kicks for him as well.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I do remember now, but as I said, I don't think it was anything untoward. Collingwood did have a bit of the worst of it, but as I said, they've had a good run in other games. I think they'll deal with it.
I mean, there's still they still have all their chances to be able to play finals and defend their premiership, but the
Yeah,
window is
absolutely.
slowly closing.
I would say slowly. I think it's like one of these things where it's like, it's the garage door and, it's almost to the ground and you got to figure out how to like slide under it. I think that's what the Collingwood Magpies have to deal with for the
Pretty
last
much.
couple.
Pretty much.
Um,
And then
but yeah,
just to finish off, Scott Pendlebury, 400 gamer, he's still giving it his all.
yeah,
No signs of slowing down. 18 disposals, 6 contested possessions, 3 inside 50, 6 score involvements, 7 tackles. 7 tackles for being,
absolutely.
what, 33? 34?
Yeah, I believe it.
That's insane for someone like one of the oldest players in the comp to still have
Yeah,
one of the strongest forms. And then 27 pressure acts as well. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Because
I actually do want to give it.
you
Oh,
didn't
sorry.
see
Okay.
players like I think Silk actually might have still had these sorts of stats, but like Dyson Fletcher definitely didn't. He was nursed to 400 games.
Yeah, exactly. He sort of, he was very. He chose a lot of his runs and a lot of his opponents at the very end.
And
So,
they also like very much used him as the sub rule for a lot of back
oh
then as
yeah,
well,
I
just
get
to
it.
try and
Yeah,
get him to
yeah.
400. So
No, I remember that. Yeah.
but yeah, overall, very, very close game, very, very thrilling game to watch as
Yeah.
an impartial viewer. I can imagine how the nerves would have been for both teams Friday night. But yeah, Sydney stay on top. Collingwood still fighting for their premiership defense. And yeah, pretty
Yeah.
interesting way to start the weekend because it kind of threw ladder positions up in the air yet again.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because you think Sydney losing would affect the ladder a bit more, and it would have, but yeah, as I said, it was just at the end of the day, like a lot of teams actually preferred this sort of result. Because there's a few people that would have been on the heels of Collingwood overtaking them had this not occurred. So
Absolutely.
and Sydney just did what they need to get done. Like as I said, it's improvement. As I said, patch up defensively.
Yeah, if they're able to
and
get
as
on
for
a bit of a
Collingwood,
run going into
yeah,
the finals, they could still be unstoppable. They might find their form again.
yeah, and unfortunately, Collingwood needed that forward pressure to play so well because they did. Like any other team, I think they would have beaten this round. But unfortunately, they kicked 7-12 from the forward half. We pretty much summed up. They could get the ball locked in there. They just didn't take advantage of it. But yeah, some of their forward pressure was insane. I'm just going to shout out like players like Bane McCreary. Even Bobby Hill was playing a lot of pressure, kicked a couple of goals. And yeah, just all the players that contributed to that. It was pretty cool.
Sounds
Just
pretty right.
didn't end up in a win.
Yeah, exactly. But who knows what's going to happen these next 2 weeks for those two teams? Everything could change.
Yeah, just that sort of season.
All right. Do you want to take the first Saturday game?
Yes. So we're going for pretty much a spoonbowl. Like not in terms of either of these teams are likely to get it, but it opened it up a lot more for North Melbourne, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I don't know if they won the number 1 pick. But yeah, but it was a very entertaining game. Blundstone not really known for its high-scoring, entertaining games of football, but the wins were kept away, much like defence was for most of this contest, which is pretty even overall. Kangaroos dominated clearances and inside 50s, but the Eagles' backline, the story of the year, kept the Roos at bays. Normally they have a fantastic scoring rate per inside 50. We've talked about a lot. Normally the problem is not getting it in there enough. But this Eagles side were able to quell most of it. And in transition, the Eagles will be a lot better. But unfortunately, in the second quarter, they failed to convert their score in the second shot. Failed to convert their set shots in the second quarter. And in the third, this will catch up to them. Kangaroos will separate, get a 35-point lead before the Eagles kick 4 in a row, set up a thrilling last quarter. Ewan Cripps got goals to even it up before Paul Curtis would go absolutely ham. it would be 0-2 at this point, and then go on to finish the game with 3 goals for. A bit inaccurate, but still a heroic effort in the last quarter. And it looked like it would win them the game, if not for some sublime stoppage work from the Eagles and an absolutely thrilling captain's effort, as Allen would go from being held by Comben to 2 behinds in the first half, to kicking 2 goals free. 2 of the 3 last goals, finishing 5 goals too, as the Eagles had an absolutely phenomenal comeback win. They won 14-13, 97 to 15-12, 102. I'm not sure if you were able to catch the last 2 minutes.
I did watch the last 2 minutes because I was watching. I was up in Brisbane for the Brisbane VGWS game. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I was very closely paying attention to this game at the same time because the one I was at was very boring.
Yeah.
So I was very much watching the score and I was just watching it change. I managed to watch the last 18 seconds on my phone live. But I did end up going back and watching those last 2 minutes, and that was insane of a performance.
Oh, yeah, as I said, Oscar Allen, as clutch as you want from your captain, because, yeah, as I said, he was beaten comprehensively, and, yeah, as I said, came back and be one of the best players on the ground.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'll talk a bit about individual performance. We'll just run through it, because obviously this game didn't have too much implications in terms of long terms. For as tall as the Eagles stood, it was the big man for North that set up their game. And while BJ Williams does get a lot of credit for nullifying some of the direct tap work dominance from North, Cherry recorded a night-high stoppage and centre clearances, recording a round-high 13 clearances from 30 disposals, 80% efficiency, 10 ground ball gets, a round-high 12 tackles, 6 inside 50s, and 9 score involvements. Easily the best ruck performance. There was another one in a game that I'll cover, we'll talk about. Absolutely fantastic. Pure mint. Continues his claim for the best ruckman of the year. In terms of the midfield for North, they were a bit up and down, but the link between midfield and forward by Tom Powell and Harry Sheasel, who kicked a couple each and had 9 and 10 score involvements between them. Helped North get through to the goals. As I said, they were struggling with the Eagles' defense, but those 2 players helped them get a pretty good score against them. Yeah, as I said. And in terms of other people that stood tall, the man mountain standing in the way, my MVP for the game was Jeremy McGovern. He had a mammoth performance. When the Eagles were getting hammered by inside 50s, they weren't able to convert because this man took 13 intercepts, 5 intercept marks from those, 25 disposals with 560 meters from that, 84% efficiency, and kept Larky to a quiet 1 goal, despite, as I said, I think the North won the inside 50s by like 9 or maybe even 10. So yeah, as I said, yeah, he was absolutely huge. To finish off, McKercher, his 37 disposals were very impressive. 6 score involvements from halfback with 684 meters gained. And to finish off, I'd like to say the Eagles, I think, have found a couple of 20-for-25 regulars. They're at the point where they're looking for next season. And Zane True, I think, went from looking from a, probably a delistable player. He wasn't really in that midfield mix for the earlier part of the season. Being overlooked for like Gibney or Harry Edwards or whichever one plays midfield. I can never remember.
It's one of them, I can tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. And then Tyrell Dewar. He might be easing the pain of Tyler Brockman not working out so far. Obviously, he's been injured and not looking that great when he's been in. But the 20-year-old Dewar, he's got some height, he's got some speed, and he showed some glimpses, especially in that game. Wasn't one of the top performers, but definitely in the last few weeks, I've been very impressed with the bits that he's been able to do. And, I mentioned before, nothing will be taken from this contest strategy-wise. I think the biggest thing is North trying to figure out how they can run stop runs of goals, because this is a game where they did cough up another lead. There's a few games like that's happened for them. But yeah, in terms of the Eagles, it was fantastic. back-to-back games is always huge when you're a bottom four team, and that does sometimes take a bit of luck with scheduling. It was really good momentum for them, and gives Schofield a solid argument for being head coach. And unfortunately for North, despite their upside this season, it's probably the last chance you would expect them to win this season. So they've just got to keep pushing the upsides. Clarko will need to buckle down, and hopefully, makes a few changes, because I don't think he can just expect this young, talented group to just win more games this next year by natural growth.
Yeah.
I think they really need a structural fix-up to try and put them in positions to win games more, because, as good as we've seen them, like, they've won one game against Gold Coast their only away game win was at the Eagles. The one against Gold Coast and Richmond at home.
Right.
So it's not the biggest of wins. An upset would change their scope of the season. But as I said, really it's only players and their efforts that have been a highlight. So, hopefully they can conjure up something and bring a bit more optimism. But yeah, it's just a bit of a downer for them, because they had the chance to get the solid win, and it just went slip.
To their credit, though, played a brilliant game. It would have been nice for the win, but for the most part, high scoring.
Oh yeah,
very intense.
Offensively fine. And you know what? At this point of the season, you're not really going to care. As I said, it's not like the defense. I'm going to say, they really care that they gave up 1 or 2 points. Yeah, I think it's specifically that they gave up the lead. That's disappointing. Because it is what it is at this time. You can't do anything. You can't wave your magic wand and just, be one of the better defenses.
No,
you're just dealing with what you got at the time. That's something that
they're still trying to work through.
Yeah. So yeah, as I said, but as I said, it's always a few players, Sheasel, Powell, McKercher, Cherry. Bryn Teakle this game, I thought he was quite impressive. He kicked a couple of goals and provides some assistance in the ruck. And yeah, as I said, they're just working on who they're gonna play in 2025. So are the Eagles, but they get the win. So Gaff came on and did okay.
There's a slightly better upside for the Eagles in this week.
Yeah, I think so. Or just in general, but we'll talk more about that when we wrap up some of the seasons for the bottom teams, probably in the bye week, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would say so. All right, let's jump over to the game that I was at, the first game that I was at this weekend. Brisbane v GWS at the Gabba. If there's one thing that I really, really liked from going to this game, it's the atmosphere. The crowd when the Gabba is full is actually insane. Getting to hear the crowd sing Country Roads all around you after Charlie Cameron kicks a goal is very surreal after you just hear it on the TV all the time.
I might get a few flashbacks if I saw it, so maybe I won't go to the Gabba while he's still playing. But I was happy to hear that the atmosphere.
The game itself, though, considering Brisbane lost, not very great. Probably the worst game that I probably could have taken my American friends to for their first AFL game, because of what the loss.
Yeah,
but as an impartial viewer, though, it was pretty entertaining, because being a Richmond supporter, I don't care when this game finishes up. It doesn't affect us. We're still at the bottom.
Yeah,
but in terms of just seeing good teams play, 8-16 is not a good look for Brisbane. So the scoreline overall 8-16-64 to 13-4-82. GWS were very, very accurate this week, whereas Brisbane were absolutely wasteful. A lot of rush kicks towards goal. I don't believe there are any rush behinds off the top of my head. If there was, they would have been on the opposite side of the stadium where I couldn't see it.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, 8-16 is not a good look for a team that's trying to seal their position in top 4.
Yeah, and I'll quickly point out the stoppages. GWS 9-1 from stoppages, 55. Brisbane had more opportunities but finished off with 3-11-29. So they were getting a lot of they were dominating from stoppage, is what they always do. They were just not converting at all. As you mentioned, a lot of those misses were from set play, and yeah, there wasn't too much rushed. It was just misses.
Yeah, it's just a very, very unpleasant game in front of goals for Brisbane. Whereas for GWS, they had a lot of fun with what they were able to achieve, especially in that second half. I'll start with a young mid, someone who started this season as a substitute. First couple of games was as a substitute role, but then made his way into the 22, and that's James Peatling. He pretty much dominated the clearances, finishing with 20 disposals at 75% efficiency, 11 contested possessions, 6 inside 50s, 9 clearances, 2 goal assists, 3 score involvements, 6 tackles, and 13 pressure acts. He was very, very entertaining to watch. I do want to also mention Dusty Jones, who played alongside him very, very closely. Who also pushed up forward a lot. Very, very exciting to watch in that last quarter as well. Kicked 2 very important goals.
Fantastic.
Finished with 18 disposals at 83.3% efficiency, 5 inside 50s, 2 goals, 5 score involvements, and 16 pressure acts. And Finn Callahan, I thought, also had a brilliant game. He ran both ways the entire afternoon. 24 touches at 91.7% efficiency, 7 contested possessions, 5 marks, 3 clearances, 12 pressure acts, and 493 meters gained. And then a brief shout out to Jesse Hogan as well for being a good target up forward. Managed to take a lot of good contested marks.
Yeah. I was just going to briefly say, one of the best things for GWS is the youth of Callahan and Peatling. Callahan being a bit over because I'm pretty sure he's a mature age rookie coming in. But, as I said, they've often been a bit seen as one-dimensional, but obviously it's been, Kelly,
both the Greens.
Emilio and even Green coming in, obviously he's a bit younger, but and even Whitfield when he played midfield a bit more, but they're able to retool, which is going back to their strengths back in the later 2010s, but with different players, and probably providing a bit more consistency as well. I've been impressed with how good week in, week out players like Callahan and, as you said, Peatling, ever since it's been crusted, has gotten. So, just want to emphasize that point.
Well, not to mention the fact that by the end of the first quarter, the scores were 31-1, and then GWS bounced back from the second quarter onwards, and Brisbane just couldn't keep up.
Yeah, well, I mean, Brisbane was still winning by the what do you call it, the third quarter.
Yeah, they were. But GWS are winning the quarters in terms of an overall statistical standpoint. Scoreline. But speaking of Brisbane, let me shout out a couple of players who I thought had pretty solid performances. Will Ashcroft was very exciting to watch through the midfield, collecting 29 disposals at 75.9% efficiency, 9 contested possessions, 9 marks, 5 clearances, 10 score involvements, 12 pressure acts, and 335 meters gained. And then I kind of struggled. I don't actually know how to pronounce this name. I think it's Shadow Brain.
Oh, Shadow Brain.
Yeah, thank you. Is he Irish, perchance?
I think so.
Or French? I don't know. It's like a weird French name. But anyway, point is, I thought he was really, really good in their backline. Finished with 19 touches at 84.2% efficiency, 10 contested possessions, and 11 intercepts. He attempted to play the role that Harris Andrews pretty much took. Granted, Harris Andrews also had a great game on his own. But yeah, there's just too much inefficiency in terms of cohesiveness along their back. But I thought there were a couple that still stood out.
Yeah. Also, I couldn't find if he's Irish, but I've got a fun fact for you.
Yeah, go on.
Brain has 12 siblings, including 7 brothers who also play Australian rules football.
That's crazy.
One of a lot. Probably, maybe that was just it. Maybe they converted. Maybe they went to the random name converter after, I don't know, the 6th child. Maybe that's how Shadow got his name. But
it feels like a French name, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe Dutch. I don't know. He's born in Australia, so
Okay.
yeah, I don't know where his parental lineage is.
It's probably Western Europe heritage, I would say.
Yeah,
Anyway, um, was cool. Was still a good game to watch. Although a little bit boring as the game went on because Brisbane just started to look worse. But there were still some standout
yeah,
players. They're still trying to fight their fight for top four. Losing this game definitely puts it more at risk. But GWS definitely needed this to keep their finals hopes alive. They're fighting, they're fighting the doggies,
yeah,
they're fighting Hawthorn, and they're fighting Collingwood to try and get in for one. So they definitely
yeah,
needed this to keep that alive.
yeah. No, they're in. They're in. They're at 56 points. Carlton's on 48. If I did my math right,
Carlton and
they
Essendon,
can't.
we will talk about that in a moment, but those two teams,
Yeah,
they might not play finals.
yeah. But I'm just saying, like GWS can't miss even if they miss out.
I think it's a
Because
very slim chance they could drop to ninth, but that'll all depend on other teams.
oh, right, right. Sorry, no, I did math bad.
Yeah, they're definitely not locked in yet,
Yeah,
otherwise
yeah,
we would
yeah.
know about
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I get you. Oh, that means Port aren't locked in.
No,
Sad.
no one's locked in except for Sydney.
Sydney. Okay, okay, I believe you. I'm sorry.
It's still statistically possible for Port Adelaide to drop out of
I'm
the
I'm here
gates.
for I'm here for team analysis, not math.
Speaking of team
Yeah, that's my
analysis,
bad.
do you want to take the next Saturday game?
Yeah, okay. So this one was huge for ladder implications. And it's going to be a bit of a tale for Freo season because they'll be wondering about the little things that could have swayed their season as they're sort of staring into ladder limbo. The game started rough for them. They lost Sean Darcy before the bounce
Mm-hmm.
in the game up to join Josh Tracy as the big outs. And then they conceded 4 straight goals that star from excellent centre circle work. Shades of last week where they were conceding goals from the centre last against Essendon in the last quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, Geelong's good for 50 pressure. From then on, it'll be a slow climb back into the game for Freo. They'll fix a lot of problems in their midfield with Young and Sarong stamping their authority on the game when they could.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the game was, simplistically put, Geelong's high pressing intercept game culled a lot of the shallow entries for Fremantle. But once they broke their line, worked in deep, they were killing Geelong in the one-on-ones. And Sarong, in a floating midfield forward position, found unmarked space all night. He kicked 3 goals for Freo and was absolutely fantastic. Freo had the goal lead in the last quarter. Geelong absolutely cracked down on Freo's transition, though, forcing a lot of kick marks that would lead nowhere with, an unlikely hero emerging in 2024. One of the best players of the night was Reece Stanley, who would allow Geelong to control positions with his 16 hitouts to advantage for the night, 64% win rate. And once it was in Geelong's forward half, they were killer, as the Dockers again would find themselves losing another game, partially due to lapses in stoppages, partially due to losing a lot of men up forward. Like their forward line was in a bit of dysfunction due to that.
Mm-hmm.
And would go down 9-8, 62 to 10-13, 73, despite having nearly 100 more possessions and 33 more marks than Geelong. As I said, Freo had a lot of the ball, but they couldn't really find a way to use it. And I will say there was a lot of drop marks in the forward line for Freo. I don't, again, want to highlight bad performances, but, when you look at some of their lower performances, it was their tolls. It was Patrick Foss, he dropped a few on the forward line and missed a few shots. Tabernar, he was just, a bit rough. He's a bit past it. And Giant Amos, who unfortunately just couldn't present enough. He I won't even say he was shut down because, as I said, there were a few leading targets that were open. They just couldn't quite find that connection. That's sort of why Freo did not have a lot of scoring shots in the game.
Maybe they missed Tracy up forward more than we thought.
I don't even think it's more than I thought. Like, he is a distributor, and his marking presence too. Like, it's funny, like, of all the drop marks that happen, you're sort of sitting there thinking, man, they really could have used Josh Tracy. But not to be. Sometimes that happens. You can't have all the players at your disposal. But yeah, more on the plus side for Freo, because they actually had, well, that statistical dominance in possession. They had some of the best stat performers. Caleb Sarong, I mentioned before, obvious 3 goals, but 22 disposals at 82% efficiency, 6 clearances, 5 tackles, 2 marks inside 50, 3 goals, as I said, and 6 score involvements. As I said, in a game of cheap stats, Hayden Young still had a blinder despite only having 22 disposals. He had 7 clearances, 14 contested possessions, 11 ground ball gets, 6 score involvements, and 1 goal won. And yeah, Dockers arguably had 2 of the best statistical players on ground, and Jordan Clark's 28 disposals, 96% efficiency game with 10 marks, 6 score involvements, and 7 intercepts. I would have said he was actually the best player of the game. So, as I said, this is a weird game for the Dockers. They had the top 3 champion data ranked performers. They had the top 3 fantasy points performers. But this could not overcome Geelong, who were very consistently good. It was a lot of the system. I mentioned Stanley's influence. But yeah, Zach Guthrie in the back line, he got 11 intercepts in a 20 disposal game. And the addition of Bitcast and Dempsey combined, 17 intercepts led to Freo struggling to score. As I said, Geelong was sort of walling them off if the ball was going in shallow. On the other side, Shannon Neal, 8 possessions for 8 score involvements, including his 2 goals won. And yeah, as I said, so not the biggest stat performance, but some absolutely terrific ones. And in terms of some of the stars that did get a few, Max Holmes lit it up. 20 disposed, 677 metres gained, 5 inside 50s, and 3 score involvements. And Patrick Dangerfield, he had some absolutely fantastic impact. He had 20 disposals, a bit not as effective with the ball, but 14 contest possession, 11 clearances, 8 score involvements. He was pretty big and influential. So, yeah, as I said, it was just another game for let slip. Unfortunately, this game more than others, there was a bit more going against them. But I think they'll be a bit disappointed with how much their transition got shut down in the last quarter. Because, yeah, as I said, they weren't really consistently scoring with it. And when that was shut down, it was just old Geelong. They were made to pay. So, as I said, with the excellent stat lines, with the big disposal winners for Freo being players like Ryan, Sharp, Wagner, and Johnson, they just had too many turnovers between them and were poor defensively. I mentioned Luke Ryan. He is really struggling defensively without Alex Pearce. And I think this was another game that sort of proved it. And, as I said, in terms of Geelong, this was an absolutely fantastic game. Probably the last big test for the season. They won't want to drop any games from here, but, if they don't, this will be the game that proves, like, it's not just, the easier schedule that's gotten Geelong into, like, a big finals push. They've had some good games.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I think one of the other good things is, like, a few of their players that didn't get involved so much in the game, like Brad Close and surprisingly Tyson Stengel. I thought this game would absolutely suit him with the amount of ball that was coming to ground, but unfortunately he just they sort of both got involved in some of the small things, a lot of the pressure acts, tackles in the 50s especially. And yeah, as I said, it's just that system that is getting more and more succinct for Geelong.
Yeah, well, they're definitely peaking at the right time, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're not even exactly at their highest peak yet either.
No, well, even like this game, like because I mentioned Freo not getting the ball inside 50. Geelong, in return, they did struggle to capitalize on their in the middle part they were struggling the few times that they were able to get the flow of play. So yeah, as I said, consistency, I guess. Consistency scoring still like a tiny issue, but in terms of player performance and setting up your team to be put in a winning position. I think they've done pretty well the last few games.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, they're currently in the 8, so at the most they're trying to push for top 4, which is entirely possible still for them.
Yeah, they got the Eagles and Saints to finish off the season.
They should convincingly win those 2 games and solidify. Solidify. They will at least solidify top 8. Whether they could get that tilt for top 4, that'll depend on a couple of other teams, obviously. But they're certainly putting themselves in a good chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, that's about all I want to say. Statistically for that, I mean, there's still a lot of other good performers. I think Josh Draper, for Freo, did pretty well. As well as Heath Chapman, I thought had a very good game off halfback. But as I said, it's like the statistic wise, there was a lot going in Freo's favour. But they just couldn't quite capitalize on it. And 2 really big bursts, obviously in the first bit and in the last half, really got them into it. But as I said, Freo will be disappointed because they kept Geelong to I think 2 goals for the middle period of the game. They just couldn't pile on the as I said, it was just that slow comeback when they really needed to take a bit more advantage of some of their entries. And as I said, unfortunately, I think you can attribute that to just running that Taberner, Amos, and Voss forward line with having none of them really firing.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's definitely something that Freo needs to work on because it seems to happen in big games more often than not. It's like what am I looking for? It's like the consistency just kind of drops off all of a sudden.
Yeah, and especially against top teams because there's been a lot of hope and a lot of good signs of Freo, but we have seen them against some of the top team. I don't want to push this because I think I said it last week, but their top record, I think they've won 3 games against the current top 8, which I think is the lowest. Maybe it's 2 even. And a lot of those games is with forward line collapses and midfield collapses being key elements of those 2. Obviously the midfield's still young, even the forwards line's still young a bit, but as I said, they're missing that big spark small forward. Obviously missing Schultz, going from trade. I will say Michael Frederick is very much an in-and-out player. I don't think he's got the consistency that you might want to see from where he is in the game.
Which sucks because he's an AFL favorite. People love watching Michael Frederick play.
Oh yeah, his impact is still great. I think some of his decision making just leads to it. There's often times where he takes shots when he shouldn't. Some of his pass offs tend to miss the target, and as I said, his set shot is just okay. He definitely likes a few run-on plays.
I think Michael Walters is kind of in the same boat as well.
Well, I said he'll retire at the end of the season.
He's getting there.
Yeah, they just got to figure it out. And as I said, unfortunately for you, that they're sort of targeting a couple of players for Richmond to try and fill that gap.
Oh yeah, no, I'm familiar.
There's still a lot they can do this year. As I said, it's just remained to be seen whether they can get that against the top teams. And I think getting that home ground advantage is vital if they want to make a push. Otherwise, they'll probably be one and done, in my opinion. But who knows? It's a lot of time in football. Things change.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially this season. One week and everything could be tipped on its head. It's crazy.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Well, I'll hand it over to you.
Let's go. Let's go to Marvel Stadium, shall we?
Yeah, this one.
For an absolute thriller of a final quarter between Essendon and the Gold Coast Suns. 12-14, 86 to 13-9, 87. Gold Coast come from behind, kicking a match-winning goal after the siren, gets them their first win away from home, and to all but end the Bombers' finals plans. The Bombers still have a very, very, very slim chance of making finals. Very, very slim. But this loss, as 1 point puts it, is pretty much season ending. they need to rely on a couple of other teams if they want to actually make the top 8, and it's looking less likely that it's going to happen this season for them.
Yeah.
So at this point, I don't think anyone is surprised. The Essendon edge, it comes and goes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's just one of those things where, unfortunately, like, as much as the Essendon edge, they're suffering a lot from later half Essendon. And, if this is the game that sinks their finals half, I think there's no other symbolic way of it happening than losing to a bottom 10 team after a big win against a potential top 4 candidate.
Yeah.
Happens all the time.
It's very much the Essendon way at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the Carlton cycle of misery has now moved over to Essendon.
Yeah, well, I said that might still happen to Carlton this season. We're yet to be seen. But yeah, I said this game, there was still a lot of okay things about Essendon, but it just didn't happen for them. And yeah, as I said, I'd say looseness was the biggest thing. Looseness in defense cost them a lot. Looseness in conceding from stoppages and turnovers. And yeah, because I only watched a bit of it, but yeah, as I said, and 1-on-1 defensively, let a player that you will go on about. I won't steal it. I'll let you talk about him.
If it's the player that I'm thinking of, yes, it is. He's the number 2 player I'm going to talk about. The number 1 player I'm going to talk about is Matt Rowell, because he's back to his ball-winning best.
Yeah.
He was a monster in the middle. 32 disposals, 20 contested possessions, 5 inside 50s, 9 clearances, 7 score involvements, 7 tackles, and 22 pressure acts. Absolute magnet. Was pressuring absolutely anyone he could get his hands on. And yeah, he was very key. Him, Flanders as well. There's a third person in there that I'm currently blanking on, but like the usual sort of suspects in that midfield, they stepped up this week, and they desperately needed to after a couple of weeks of rough performances.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because yeah, as I said, it was just one of those things where, yeah, as I said, they weren't. Oh, I mean, I said all year, like that link up between midfield and forward line hasn't always been there for the Suns, but in this game, I know Essendon isn't the best team defensively, but they're able to capitalize away from home, which is what they haven't done all year. And yeah, as I said, it was some big performance and start with Rao because, as I said, earlier in the season, he played that defensive role. We've been talking about it. Now the season's a bit over. I think they're just letting him play a bit more towards his natural game. I don't blame them because it's clear, like, they're going to have to do some midfield adjustments. So,
yeah, there definitely needs to be some sort of evolution in that midfield, whether it's more defensive pressure, whether it's more like finding a different player to fill a specific hole, that sort of thing.
Exactly. But, like, that's not on Matt Rowell. Like, him playing his natural game is absolutely fantastic to see because he still provides a lot of pressure, as you say. But he gets that ball forward.
Well, I mean, he's a former number 1 draft pick for a reason, right? Like, he's
exactly
that important. Now, let's talk about the man of the hour. Mac Andrew, pushing up from defense into the forward line. Insane move by Dimmer, but it worked. He kicked 4 goals from 13 disposals at 69.2% efficiency, 5 contested possessions, 5 marks, 5 score involvements, and 17 pressure acts. He was doing things that you don't expect from the Gold Coast forwards, and it's exactly what they needed to be able to secure this win.
Yeah, and I think it's just one of those dangerous things that they're missing, like, because Ben King, like, he's a good lead, but he's not a fast lead, and I think what Mac Andrews did, and, what they've seen missing is, sometimes, like, the best thing for being a tall forward is not so much taking those marks and, always doing what Mac Andrew does, kicking 4 goals, but providing space by being a threat.
Yeah.
So Mac Andrews, he might get more attention if this move continues on. But no doubt that might then open up the game for players like Ben King or even Ben Long. As I said, he plays as a leading forward target despite being a smaller man. And yeah, as I said, it just seems a bit more Diverse, I'll say, in that forward line, with Mac Andrews there.
Yeah, I don't think it was a move that Edison was definitely not expecting. But sometimes you got
Yeah,
to push a defender forward to be able to make a massive play,
yeah,
and
exactly.
or if you're the Bulldogs, you push a forward back to make it an impressive play.
Yeah. And, as I said, it's 2 times Mac Andrews has gone forward for 7 goals. So, if you do the math, that is 3.54 goals per game. So,
Correct.
pretty great.
That's 7 divided by 2. That's how that works.
Yeah. Technically, they have floated him for minutes, but in terms of full games, yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think it's
pretty
definitely
good.
something that Dim is toying with, and who knows? It could end up being a permanent solution for a while. But
Yeah.
it's an
Well, it
interesting
seems
move to
like a
see.
trial period for the Suns, they're doing a bit more things. I don't think it's like them saying, "Oh, the season's going to end." I think it's Dimmer saying, "Look, you know, I think they're treating it as they can still make finals. They're obviously super, even more unlikely than the other teams.
Yeah, they're like the
But
lowest of the low chances, but
yeah, exactly. I think it's okay, we're going to try and make moves, to see if we can get some momentum. Um, so if it works, we go into next year. If it doesn't, it was very unlikely to happen anyway,
mhm.
but at least we know. And, I appreciate some of this braveness from him. So, yeah, because as I said, last week was so disappointing. But yeah, as I said, a few heads up moves by the man who normally absolutely hates this venue and was able to manage a win.
Yeah, this is his first. This is his first win since saying that infamous line.
Yeah,
It's
obviously
the
the
curse is
draw
finally
means that.
broken.
Yeah.
Well, time to talk about one more Gold Coast player, veteran Jared Witts.
Hmm.
Absolutely, absolutely scored. Not scored. Well, he did score, but he
Sure.
absolutely schooled the Essendon Rocks, Draper especially. Although credit to Draper, I thought he still had a decent game. He kicked. I mean, stats wise, probably not saying much. But he kicked 2 goals. He was able to be some kind of tall presence, which Essendon definitely needed. But Jared Witts just beat him comprehensively in the middle. 43 hitouts with
Mm.
14 to advantage, 14 disposals at 71.4% efficiency, 9 contested possessions, 4 clearances, 5 score involvements, 12 pressure acts, and 5 1%ers. Again, just like the other Rock games we currently talked about, very consistent performance, and it's definitely something that they have needed, the Gold Coast Suns. They're a much better side with him in.
Mm. No, exactly. Oh, the jump from Wits to back when they were playing. What was his name? Moyle. Moyle.
Yes.
Was pretty big. Even though I think Moyle did an okay job.
Yeah, like Moyle is definitely a player that they want to invest time in to be able to
Yeah.
at least be able to be the backup to Wits when Wits is out, or when Wits retires. Who knows when that'll be?
Yeah.
Um,
He's
but yeah, for now, the Gold Coast definitely looks so much better with him and Matt Rowell. That's all you really need in the midfield sometimes.
yeah, for sure.
And then just to
Just
shout out
very solid.
a couple of Essendon players who I thought did pretty well. Dylan Shiel, I thought had one of his best games since moving to Essendon because he's been injured so much. He finished with 24 disposals at 91.7% efficiency, 7 contested possessions, 6 marks, 5 inside 50s, 6 clearances, 9 score involvements, and 18 pressure acts. This is the sort of game that you would see a lot of him at GWS. And then since he moved to Essendon, he's just been horror injury after horror injury and just couldn't get back into
Yeah.
form. But this was a really good game to see from him.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I think it's a couple of weeks in a row. I think I gave him a shout out last week.
Yeah, you did.
So yeah, it's back-to-back form games. Apparently, I think he played a bit more inside midfield this time after going there and having an impact last week. So yeah, they're definitely recognizing he's still got a bit to give after being a bit pushed out. Yeah, as I said, because because Essendon's midfield, they do work around it, but it can be a bit flaky at times. Obviously not another player that you'll say he's did very well, but the players around him can be a bit like that. So very important for Essendon, if they are to have a chance at finals, is to keep Dylan Shield in the mix because he deserves to be back in there.
Absolutely. And then another player on form who is, for the most part, always on form unless he has a tag on him is Zach Merritt, their captain.
Yeah.
He tried his heart out. 32 disposals, 13 contested possessions, 8 intercept possessions, 8 marks, 10 inside 50s, 11 score involvements, 5 tackles, 15 pressure acts, 3 1%ers, and 585 meters gained, which I believe was the most of the game. So he was doing everything that he could.
I think he only narrowly missed that sealer too, because I remember it being late because I saw it. And
It was. I'm pretty sure it was within the last couple of minutes too, which is insanely rough for them. And then just two little tidbits to round out this game. One injury to Nick Cox with concussion, so he will miss the rest of the season. Well, he might be lucky to come back for round 24. I can't remember when they're playing, but it's very, 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 very close for him. If they don't make finals, unfortunate. He won't get to play another game if he does miss round 24. But hopefully he recovers well. Hopefully it's pretty easy recovery for him. And then the Rising Star actually goes to Essendon this week with Nate Caddy getting the nomination.
Oh yeah, of course.
As I have just brought up. He had 15 disposals, 6 marks, and 3 goals. Overall, very, very good performance from him, despite it being a loss. Very consistent performance. He's been playing really, really well. Pretty much all season long. And it's good to see that he's finally been recognised as well. And this is the third Rising Star. Sorry, he's the first Rising Star for Essendon since 2022, because they had 3 in the 2022 season, which was Nick Martin, Ben Hobbs, and Massimo D'Ambrosio, who is now playing for Hawthorn.
Oh, of course, yeah. I'm glad you didn't quiz me because I would have got none of them.
The article has it all covered. Don't you stress.
Credit
to him. Credit to Essendon for trying. You know, it's hard. 1 point losses.
Yeah. I will say though, like, it's very interesting, and it like ties back to Nick Caddy, and it's happened a lot this season where it's just so random, like who in their forward line produces, because like you had last game where like the Mosquito Fleet, you know, I mentioned I don't think he scored many goals, but Jake Stringer, all his possessions were score involvements. Jay Gresham was getting involved, and then like this week, I know Stringer missed a bit, but he was still a bit off. Stringer didn't have much. Carl Langford didn't even get on the scoreboard.
Mm-hmm.
I know like he's a toll for, but he tends to like play well when Stringer plays well. And Gresham. I don't know why those 3. And then, you know, you've got the Tolls who absolutely had a great night out, like Nat Caddy and Sam Draper when he moved forward. So it's got to be a head scratcher, I think, for Brad Scott, figuring out how to get that consistency. Because, yeah, as I said, they've got the ability to control games. They've got the ability to score above their opponents. But, you know, with that slightly thin defense, you know, they just got to figure out how to do it more consistently and, you know, provide more, again, I guess, diverse forward line attacks, you know. I mean, obviously 86 isn't bad, but 12-14 is the biggest worry for us in that regard.
Okay, I got some breaking news for us, which just came out an hour ago. Not related to the AFL directly, but related to the VFL, and I'm going to bring this up. Sam Wicks has copped a 4-game ban in the VFL.
Oh, Sydney. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I should have specified Sydney. He's 4-game ban in the VFL, ruling him out to at least the 3rd week of finals if the Swans make it to the prelim, for that fact. That's rough, but...
It is, but yeah... Well, it's been a pretty bad couple of weeks because he wasn't that great when the Swans got belted by Port. Gets to make the VFL, and, you know, as I said, I guess it goes back to that point last week where some of their fringier players aren't quite up to what the Swans want to do. So they'll be hoping that the Swans are able to stay healthy because, they won't even get one of their fringier players to access, I guess.
Yeah, and especially considering they still won't have Papley until finals either. That's
Yeah, for
not great
sure.
for their forward line at all. Um,
No.
anyway, let's move on. You have the last Saturday game, I believe.
Yeah, and look, it's not going to be like one of the prettier games that you'll ever see. As I said, I guess like last week I did pose a question when we're doing the um, what do you call it, the predictions,
Mhm.
if the D's would let their season go out in a whimper or if they would take it up to Port. And to their credit, they absolutely ramped up their defensive pressure and did a bit of retooling of their midfield to give some Port Adelaide some real headaches in this Tower affair. Highlighted only by its closeness and terrific defensive performance and pressure. It's not much talk about quarter by quarter, although I will say Melbourne coming out the gate and recording 8 tackles inside 50 in the first quarter indicated that Port weren't going to rebuff easily as they did against Sydney, which led, as I said, that insane pressure led to Cozzy Pickett having an absolute day out. He had ample avenues to go through stoppages and through, pressure. And Port, on the flip side, they had a lot of opportunities through stoppages and general play, but 16 shots from general play for the night and scored 2-5, which means a whopping 9 no scores, which added to their 4 just misses from set shot. So they left a lot on the board. And, despite there's some implied pressure coming from it, it was just a bad night shooting. Not helped by an injury to Todd Marshall. One of his concussions has gotten a few throughout his career, which caused him to be subbed out in the second quarter. So, as I said, we've got a close game on our hands. Melbourne with a slight lead. Port needed a few heroes. One of them would be Jason Horne-Francis. It was lively all day, and despite being inaccurate, would at least provide some spark. As Port Clayton Oliver, he was put in on him as halfback. I mentioned that retooling of the midfield. Clayton Oliver played a bit more from halfback, and unfortunately, he just did not provide any pressure on him. He was just run loose. And to win it, though, a super sub performance by Quinton Narkle, getting a late goal from a mark inside 50 and getting the rush behind that was almost a goal sealer. Would give Port the lead in a way the game sort of deserved. A rush behind. I think they got 2 to get that 2-point lead. So yeah, it was a funny game. Melbourne will get the help of 5 Max Gawn free kicks as the umpires were going hard on contest infringements, which you think would lead to more score considering how much the defense had to work, but didn't really work that way. And yeah, to Port's, so a lot of that was to Port's detriment because they had to do a lot of defending. But yeah, what Port did get help from was probably a flock of seagulls, as they did run away from this with a hard forward 7-9, 51 to 7-11, 53. I swear there was times where Melbourne were rebuffing and a few seagulls got in their way. They kicked it towards the white jumpers, and I am convinced that that may have been the difference in this 2-point margin affair. But yeah, as I said, in terms of standout performance individually, I can't go past Cozzy's 4-goal performance. He had 8 score involvements for the night. He kicked 4 goals, 1. So his 8 score involvements were more than half of Melbourne's total overall scoring shots. And yeah, I think did I mention? Yeah, he had 2 tackles inside 50.
Yeah.
Also to note, in terms of forward performance, although he was held goalless by Zach Thatcher, who also had a pretty good night, Harrison Petty, 6 tackles inside 50 equaled Port's team total for that count. They won the total overall 18-6. I don't think it's because Port didn't have the pressure on. I think it's just the difference in the way that offense was played by the two teams. Port were able to generate more marks where Melbourne ramped up the pressure. Gawn, individually, he was the second best performer of the night. Whoever you want to give the MVP to, it was either Cozzy or Gawn. And if he wasn't gassed in the last quarter, allowing Sweet to get into the game, I don't think Port would have won. Because, complete control, 30 hit outs, 15 to advantage, as well as 22 disposals, 15 contested, at 84 efficiency, 4 intercepts as well, and 3 score involvements. Remember, this was a low-scoring game, so every score involvement probably means a bit more. Unfortunately, outside of Viney and Sparrow continuing the bird theme for this game, there was not too much dominance from this midfield not too much midfield dominance converting, as Port won both scores from stoppage and centre bounce. But yeah, the next best performances would have to be Port's defence. I mentioned Zach Thatcher before. Despite having a few costly late lapses, had an absolutely fantastic game. I'll give him the pick of the defenders. Aaliyah was also great. He had 10 total intercepts and 3 intercept marks. Not letting Young Turner score. And Miles Bergman, he was huge because he was sore, he was limping. But despite this, kept Fritsch quiet. He kicked his only goal when Miles Bergman was sore. So credit to Tim to only allowing that. And in terms of other performers, both Farrell and Houston, I thought were responsible for a lot of Port's better back half movement. And for Melbourne, Salem, Sparrow, and Chandler had all great moments despite the restricted nature of the game. And yeah, as I said, it was an ugly win by Port. The only quarter they won in the territory battle, they got 2 goals 2. 2 goals 2-2. So to me, it was clear that if Port's defense wasn't as good as it was, maybe it was a bit uncohesive like it was earlier in the year, this would have been a game slipped by them. They did hold up great though, and some great individual performances put them on the line. Again by Horn Francis. Zach Butters was also fantastic. Sort of match you would sort of expect from him, but great nevertheless. But yeah, as I said, it was still great effort-wise by Melbourne. But a few things left me scratching my head. I'll refer back to it. Oliver falling out of the midfield rotation, fair enough. You know, he's not had a great year. Melbourne need to mix things up because they were pretty bad in the clearances.
Yeah.
So I can understand not playing him in the midfield, but playing him off half back, you know, trying to get a player some confidence, it just wasn't the move. Like, he was embarrassed by Horn Francis. And, you know, unfortunately for all to see, this was the game that was played on national television. And, you know, the commentators highlighted, like, there was just so much gap between Horn Francis and Oliver. And there wasn't any defensive efforts.
Clary off half-back wasn't the only embarrassing thing of that night. The low crowd also did not help, considering these two teams are basically fighting for top 8.
Yeah, no, that was the other comment. I was going to make it a bit later. There were more Seagulls than Melbourne supporters in this game, which was sort of the joke that came from that. Back to Clary. It was just, I don't think it's what the move that should have been made. I think while they did have that forward half dominance, maybe put him in that, because the ball was going to ground so much. Like, that suits Oliver more, like trying to get that stoppage win. Oh, sorry, not stoppage win, that ground ball win. Whereas I said, like, he's never a defensive player playing Oliver. That's just not his thing.
No, he's always been offensive minded. That's just how he
back when they had Angus Brayshaw, that used to be his role along with Viney. As I said, I just questioning that move. Because as I said, as bad as Oliver was, I don't think it was putting into a position to succeed. And again, Gawn, absolute workhorse that game. He was fantastic. But they just got rid of his sub support. They subbed off Van Rooyen, who was, he wasn't great at forward, but you know what I mean? It's just like, I think structurally you just couldn't do it. So Gawn left, taking all the middle work. Petty only taking the forward contest occasionally. Forward ruck contest, I should say. And Sweet, managed to get a hold of him in the last quarter. And, in a 2-point game, those crucial contests were absolutely huge in getting Port that victory. So, while I think a lot of things Melbourne did well, I think there were just a few things that swayed at Port way. And, they'll be pretty lucky. They'll be pretty thankful for the win because they didn't quite, grasp it. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
was just a few things separating them. Port will be very thankful that they ended up with a win. As they avoided back-to-back losses against Melbourne, so they clear that one up. And as I said, for them, if they can go 1-1 against Adelaide with a win next week in the showdown, they'll have done very well in their back-to-back games. And as I said, put them in a position to get top 4. But as I said, showdown, anything can happen. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as I said, it's just something they needed to win, and they managed it, and they're in second now. So pretty great, but not convincing. But very, I think one of the best things was the fact that so much of the game wasn't played on their terms. They still managed to grind out that win. So credit to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So you wanna see a little bit more shuffling probably from Melbourne. Like, yeah, we know the loss of Petrarca, and we know that Clary's form are both pretty rough. Viney tries his hardest, but he is a veteran. He is getting on.
Yeah.
Can't keep up all the time. Max Gawn, again, can't do all the work on his own as much as he is a monster in the mid. But it's just being able to try and shuffle some players around, find either put some players who aren't normally in the midfield. You maybe give them a little bit more time in the midfield, and maybe that'll make a difference. But when you don't want someone who isn't a defensive-minded player like Clary off halfback. As much as he has that run and that speed to be able to play in that sort of position, he's not defensive-minded. He's always been offensive-minded. So you're better off playing him half forward rather than half back if you're going to take him out of the midfield.
Yeah, exactly. And I should mention, like, the player that sort of displaced him, obviously, sorry, I gonna mention, like, Tom Sparrow. He had a few more minutes in the middle. Trent Rivers continued. Like, both of those sort of split. So Trent Rivers didn't play as much as he has the others. But joining them for his first real midfield minutes, and I think he did pretty well with them, Judd McVie. Only 22% inside midfield. But as you mentioned, like, we've known Judd McVie for his hard-running defensive efforts on the wing. So I think the idea of putting him in the middle with such a potent clearance dominance team in Port Adelaide, they love scores from stoppage, and they only kick 3 goals 5. So I think the proof's in the pudding that it was probably a good move in the end, despite obviously not working out. But yeah, as you said, it's just, it was just really the impact it had on Clary.
Yeah, it was definitely
it felt like taking an aspect of the game, like adding, and then taking it away on the other hand.
Yeah, that's what I was pretty much gonna say. Like,
yeah,
you want to try and put a player in a spot that plays to their strengths, and like maybe he wasn't having fun in the midfield. Maybe he's just lost a bit of confidence there. But he's still a great runner. He can still present well when it comes to ball marking. Like, he's able to still have a heavy impact in the forward line because he's offensive minded. But yeah, trying to find a spot for him when he's not comfortable in the midfield at the moment is going to be the hard part.
Yeah, exactly. But as I said, there'll be a lot said about it. I think the sooner this year's over for Clayton Oliver, the better. Hopefully he'll just work hard, because it's on that long contract, and, work on, setting himself up for 2025 when they get some players back. But, we might see him moved around a bit more by the end of the year. Melbourne obviously have Gold Coast next. Maybe that's sort of the game. Gold Coast aren't the best defensive team to where you could flirt that, or, just put him back in the midfield. I mean, you got to give him something to at least.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry, to at least get some confidence by the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. To Goody's credit, though, I do like the move of McVie into the inside mid rather than just off the wing. I think that's a great move for them, and definitely something they could keep experimenting with. Even with Sparrow as well, and Rivers, keeping Rivers in the midfield's good. He definitely needs that time in there. especially because he's probably going to be the player to replace Viney or Clary or Petrarca, depending on how, injury concerns and stuff like that.
You would hope that Clary isn't this isn't the start of his nosedive.
No. I'm not saying in terms of he's going to end up retiring. He's definitely going to stay belonging in the midfield, but it's whether it's a player that you rotate out into the forward line or something a bit more.
If there's a start of inconsistency for Clary and he needs to find a new role in his evolution, I get what you're saying. It's good to have players like Betty.
What if, I'm just going to toss this idea out, what if he becomes a tagging player? I mean, I know that, I know we've just been saying about him not being defensive-minded, but he has the speed to be able to keep up with some of the best runners in the competition. So what if he just maybe shifts slightly to...
You'd have to give him a pre-season for that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's not something you do, in a week.
It's maybe it's like a soft tagger, we've seen him before. It's the sort of player that will run with the best player. Not necessarily stop their game, but, as I said, just because when you're on the best player, you tend to go towards the ball, which is what Clayton Oliver loves, because when it's near the ball, he tends to win it.
Mm-hmm.
But, as I said, whether that he can add a restricting element, I'm not sure. I guess you got to think about it, because it's got to be something in this game to go back on when he is in these form slumps, assuming that this isn't going to be the only part of career with them. But yeah, as I said, he's just going to find something.
Yeah, I agree. All right, shall we move on to the Sunday games? Do you want to take the blockbuster first?
Yeah, I guess I'll take it. Well, it was scheduled to be a blockbuster. Unfortunately, the footy gods would not let that be.
The crowd.
Assuming you're talking about
the crowd.
Yeah,
definitely determined it was a blockbuster game. 80,000+ people at the MCG on a Sunday. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and it was such a shame that this game would end up the way it did. Because as I said, the crowd was hype. I think the Blues went in believing they would win. But unfortunately, what unfolded was just a pure nightmare game for Carlton. I will say, it started off with a decent contest. The Blues scored a couple of goals from their trademark stoppage work.
Mm-hmm.
But Hawthorn, on the flip side, could have converted a bit better from their great interception work and fast transition. Unfortunately, an early injury to the glass hamstring of Jack Martin would be the start of the end for Carlton. Boyd then noticed he was hobbling around in the first quarter. He would go on to play a brave but possessionless game, but he was absolutely stuffed. He could not move. But the same could not be said about Lockie Fogarty. He had ice on his ice on his collarbone by the second quarter. The same could not be said about Charlie Conroy. He re-aggravated his foot injury in the early third and had to be sat down for the rest of the game. And the same could not be said for Adam Sard, who also joined that list with a torn hamstring. It was pretty heartbreaking. I should say that hamstring was in the third quarter. You can see Carlton's spirit fade. After that first quarter, they would only score 2 goals, 5. And despite some good individual efforts by Matt Kennedy, Sam Walsh, Blake Acres, and Patrick Cripps, trying to generate something from the game, it was just a wash. Hawthorn had some absolutely beautiful bursts from the lines, like they were organising a castle siege. One of the things that I want to highlight in this game was we had our first torpedo started coast to coaster.
Love to see it.
I think it was Sicily that chose to roost. He sent it down the field, got a bit of space. I think Dylan Moore connected. All he had to do was kick the ball forward because, they just had all the forward space, kicked it forward, someone kicked the goal. I don't even know. I was too in love with the torp. But yeah, it was one of the better highlights for this game because, as I said, it was pretty much done and dusted by half-time. As I said, unfortunately, all the games before this, the team leading at 3/4 time would go on to lose. This game would try its hardest to prevent that by absolutely screwing over Carlton.
And unfortunately for Carlton, Hawthorn ended up making it a percentage game rather than a close game.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was important because they would overtake with such a big win. Carlton spot in the 8.
Yep.
So we'll go through some of the lines. Josh Weddle, despite playing off halfback, he was free to run up wherever he want. Carlton didn't have the energy to run with him, so he went up and scored 3 goals to go with his 18 possessions. He had 605 metres gained and perfect efficiency. Scrimshaw was free to do what he wanted as he played his interceptor rebound and fortunately a bit of a black widow as all his opponents suffered some form of injury on him. The final opponent that he got was Mitch McGovern, who was hobbling around a bit. So, as I said, it wasn't just all the people on the bench. He had 24 dispatches, 400 metres gained at 88% efficiency, and him here pairing up with Sicily quashed a lot of the few moments Carlton's had to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about Magnifico, we had Massimo D'Ambrosio on the wing, 31 disposals, 84% efficiency, 6 marks, 5 inside 50s, 8 score involvements. He found a lot of loose space to play. Obviously, not really a position where you play contested, but he earned a lot of his, uncontested disposal by running so hard. And the late in, I want to give a shout out to Harry Morrison. He actually ended up being a great matchup for Hollands on the other side of the wing. He had half of his 20 disposals be score involvements, as I said, this was just pure wing dominance, which you very rarely see. Like, normally when teams do well is by the central inside midfield. That still did good, but, as I said, a lot of it was on the outside, and I think it was probably some of the West wing performance since Sydney earlier in the season, where they were absolutely crushing teams on the fat side of the ground. So not much can be taken away from this one. Carlton will just be relieved to have that early run home, as they now sit outside the 8. To add insult to injury, Harry Mackay is suspected to be touch and go for the next game, if not more. So it is just looking dire. Like, if they make finals, they're going to be limping through there, because a few of these are going to be long-term injuries.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they won't be counting their eggs before they hatch, but this was a pure flex for Hawthorn. They joined the 8. So much confidence, and they'll be looking to secure their spot. They're in it for the first time. They might only be needing to stay there for 3 rounds this year, but they are as good a team as any in the 8 with what they've been able to do.
Absolutely. And when you look at their run home, they play the Gold Coast Suns and Richmond as their last 2 games. Oh, granted, exactly. They play Richmond this week and the Suns next week.
Yeah.
But no, hang on.
Yeah, Richmond Suns.
No, because we play the Suns round 24. I can't remember who they play round 24.
Oh, no. Okay. We got. So they got Richmond. I'll get it.
I'm blanking so hard.
They've got North Melbourne.
North, that's right. It's because down in Tassie. Always the last game of the season.
Yeah.
Sorry, I knew it was like a low team. I couldn't remember which one.
Point still stands.
But yeah, so
like Geelong, they've got this big win at the end of the season, confirming. I mean, no one's doubting Hawthorn's.
No, they've been one of the most improved teams of the entire season. It's been great to watch.
But as I said, they'll get some percentage. That'll be important, hopefully. And as I said, they're shown to be a bit ruthless with this. So hopefully, well, not hopefully for the other teams, Hawthorn might be able to get percentage that will guarantee them a spot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's still a silly chance for the top 4, aren't they?
It's very, very slim, but yes, it is a possible chance.
They would need 3 teams still lose out, but as I said, the silliest of chances for top 4, but
they're going to give it their all, absolutely.
Home final would be huge for them, considering, depending on how they go, they could go home final against, 7th or 8th, and so maybe, if they're lucky, versing Geelong. If they get that game,
which would be a game at the MCG, because it'd be a massive ticketed game.
Yeah, we'll talk about a bit later with Geelong, with their weirdness about homes in finals, but they have a path to a unlikely prelim. Not saying it's certain, but things will need to go their way. But all's possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
All's possible for this.
And you look at the teams currently in the 8. Just take Hawthorn out just for a brief moment. you
Yeah.
look at the rest of the teams in the 8 and their current runs of form, they're not as none of the other teams are as consistent as Hawthorn currently are,
Yeah.
which
Well,
is
I mean,
insane to kind of look at, even just from a statistical perspective. Hawthorn have been far more consistent over the past, let's say, 6 weeks than
yeah,
most of the teams in the top 8.
exactly. And the thing you got to remember, well, as I said, there's one team that hasn't, and we forgot to really mention, but the GWS Giants, they're the only team with a longer than 5 game streak of wins.
Oh, true, yeah. The Giants
With
probably the
Brisbane
only other team.
losing. But no, well, what I was going to say is, as I said, the flip side of that is that, as I said, it gets you confidence because, every team just seems fallible at the moment.
Mm.
So, it's like, it was like, why not Bulldogs in 2015? Maybe it's a
2016.
case of why not Hawthorn? 16, sorry.
Yeah, no, they could have the miracle run, and I'm here for it. Like, to be fair, as a Victorian, you do want the premiership to stay in Victoria, but also on the flip side, this is the most interesting season to watch in terms of finals chances.
Yeah. And it's insane they've got Hawthorn. For us to like Hawthorn again, like after so long, so dominant, it feels wrong, but I'm embracing it a bit. I'll let
I've
them.
never disliked Hawthorn. They've never been a traditional rival to Richmond. Like, it's always the
Oh,
Collingwoods and the Carltons and the Essendons.
yeah.
But
Unfortunately,
they've also never really been a team that I've actively liked. Like, it's always been either St Kilda or the Bulldogs. I was gonna say
yeah.
Geelong. I don't like Geelong, but yeah, just watching this young group of players. The fact that they're all so young, they're one of the youngest teams in the competition.
Hmm.
Having this miracle run is insane, and it's so exciting to watch. It what makes the AFL fun to spectators.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's 100%. But yeah, we'll quickly go to the other Melbourne game.
Yes,
Um,
the one that I was at
yeah,
wasn't a very pretty game. Going from a loss in Brisbane to a loss back home in Melbourne. I definitely would have preferred to have been at Carlton Hawthorn, to be honest. It would have been much more exciting. But essentially,
yeah,
Richmond. uh, this game pretty much signifies how bad our season has been. We thought last week's was bad against North Melbourne. This was much worse. We've pretty much had too many passengers. It happens. Like, sometimes there are just games where half the team just doesn't really do much, and
yeah.
this
Well,
was one of them.
some of those players are forced onto the bus,
Yeah, I know.
unfortunately, due to
Unfortunately,
injury.
injuries, can't help it. But you still try to want to see a decent effort,
Yeah.
and I definitely didn't see that.
Oh, for sure.
No,
But
well,
to St Kilda's credit, it gave them more confidence to possibly cause some upsets in the next 2 weeks, because they definitely they were very much on form, in terms of how
yeah,
you'd want them to, want them to be. So the scoreline was 7-9-51 to 15-9-99. We managed to keep them under 100 points, so that's a positive. Only by a point, but better than nothing. Rowan Marshall was an absolute monster in the middle. 25 hitouts with 8 to advantage, 23 disposals, 11 marks, 4 inside 50s, 8 score involvements, and 3 goals. Completely dominant in the air. Hitouts wise, he was equal with Nank, but around the ground, he was absolutely cleared him. Brad Hill was hard running all afternoon, with collecting 21 disposals at 85.7% efficiency, 6 inside 50s, 7 score involvements, 19 pressure acts, and 501 meters gained, which I believe was second most of the entire game. Tim Membry, very important in the forward line. It's good to see him have a good run of form lately. 15 disposals at 80% efficiency, 7 contested possessions, 6 inside 50s, 7 score involvements, 12 pressure acts, and 3 goals as well. And then, there were a couple of players that we still had decent games for us. Daniel Rioli being best of field in the entire game.
yeah.
He won the Ian Stewart medal, finishing with 36 disposals at 83.3% efficiency, 10 marks, 3 inside 50s, 6 score involvements, 17 pressure acts, and 689 meters gained. Was by far, like, the standout player. I am going to talk about a second important player in a minute, but I also want to just briefly mention Hugo Ralphsmith. I thought he had a decent game, even though the stats don't show it. He was in second efforts, third efforts, fourth efforts as much as he could be. He tried his heart out in terms of pressure. Also, Dion Prestia, I thought he had a decent game in the middle when Taranto and Hopper couldn't entirely get their game together, which is okay, but, it's not what you want to see for players that we paid so much for. But Sam Banks, I thought he's had a really good, consistent season now that he's been in more often. This game he finished with 25 touches at 92% efficiency, 7 contested possessions, 7 marks, 5 inside 50s, and 13 pressure acts. Just get more games into the young kids. That's all I can ask for, and just try and show up. I know there were definitely some players that look very much out of it. Jacob Bauer, I do want to shout out. I think he's going to be very important for our forward line, but I'd like to see him improve on his forward pressure because I did not see him lay a tackle at all, which is very upsetting because I was sitting level 2 at Marvel, but the front row, so I could see pretty much everything. And yeah, wasn't a great look. But that same could be said for most of our players tonight. So, but
yeah. Well, on that point, it should be worth noting that this was I think it was the lowest tackle count recorded in recent history.
I had a look at the stats after the game, I think, or it was like in the fourth quarter. Like there were 15 players for Richmond, and I think about the same amount for St Kilda, where half of that number only laid 1 tackle.
Yeah,
and the other half laid 0.
It was 27 tackles to 34.
Yeah, so like neither team really tackled. It's pretty much bruise-free footy for most of it, but
yeah, exactly. Which again, unfortunately, says a lot more about Richmond because they're known for their relentless.
We were known for our relentless tackle pressure. Clearly not anymore. But although I think part of that is due to our injury concerns. I think some of the players might just be scared that if they're gonna get injured and it's gonna like. Not that it matters now, because we're at the end of the season, and you'll have the off season to recover if they do get injured. But you don't want to put that pressure on the club where you have to dip into the VFL like West Coast had to, just to try and feel the team.
I think it's also the rotations too, because it's sort of the weird thing where it's like you could almost argue that Sydney, without because they've not needed to sub plays in and out, like. A few of their players will be feeling a bit more tired because they've been so injury-free, where Richmond's sort of been the opposite. Because everyone's been so in and out, it's been so stop-start. It's very hard for them to, finish out the game.
Yeah, and it's not a discredit to the team because we've played really close to some top 8, top 4 teams.
Yeah,
like we've been able to run with them up until the fourth quarter because we're just so young. We just run out of legs. But
yeah, exactly.
And that inexperience does get to us. But yeah, this game was it wasn't great.
Yeah, I feel like it's just adding up. Like, I feel like we've probably seen the end of close Richmond performances. I'll be surprised if they can, manage to do what they did at the start of the year. But yeah, I said I don't think it's that much of their fault.
No, part of it is 100% the injury concerns. So definitely threw a massive spanner into the works across the board. And then obviously, the champion of the game retiring, even though he didn't win a single game this season. But his, it's not that the fact that, he was one of his worst seasons, even though it kind of was, but it's like just that leadership on field. Being one of the veterans, him, even Baker, because Baker was like taking over the captaincy when Nank was out, missing both of those players, missing other players that definitely have those sort of leadership roles within the team that doesn't help, especially up forward. But just can only do so much this late in the season nowadays.
Yeah. There's one thing I want to bring up that you've failed to mention. The is the Dow Cup.
Yes, it was. This was the first time that Paddy and Tommy Dow finally got to play against each other.
Yeah. So no Mackay conspiracies for them.
No.
Confirmed to be different people.
Well, they look different for one compared to the Mackay brothers, where they are actually like twins.
It's like the Sarong brothers. Like, you know how like the Sarong that plays for Hawthorn is actually like a key
Caleb Sarong and Jai
defender.
Sarong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jai Sarong's just like this small midfielder. Like, they look similar, but you just wouldn't pick
You
it.
can tell
if it
they're
was silhouette.
brothers, but they're definitely not twins.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's crazy that there's like those sorts of weird connections just throughout the entire competition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, also shout out to Brad. He had a great game.
Yeah, I thought he had decent numbers across the board. Did the best that he could.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right, let's head over to the final game of the round.
Yeah, and while this was, we had so many close games before Sunday, and then Sunday was just like, nope. But this was probably the more interesting of the three, as unfortunately for the Dogs,
most people weren't expecting this outcome.
I tipped it. I'm not sure if you did.
No, I didn't. I tipped the Doggies. I had faith, but they probably did kind of need this loss, I feel like.
That's debatable, but in the way that they lost, they didn't need it. But yeah, I know what you mean. But unfortunately, yeah, Adelaide Oval is not a happy Hunter Crown. They've gone 0-3 at the venue this year. Although inaccuracy hurt them, going 9-18. Yeah, it was just a solid Crows forward line that dismantled the improved Dogs defense, while their own fledgling defenders were huge in limiting the ferocious forward 50 press of the Dogs. There were 5-16 forward half chains, that's Adelaide to the Bulldogs, were started in their forward 50, which resulted in 0 goals free to 4 goals 2. So in terms of what the Bulldogs normally like to set up, they had that going to them, but they still managed to keep them at bay. And when they finally managed to get the ball out, they were making the Dogs pay, scoring just over half of their scores from the back half, as Lockie Fogarty was the man to kick it to this game. He had 5 marks inside 50, 5 goals, 1. And again, he was another player that got the near perfect 9 possessions for 9 score involvements, just 1 ineffective disposal. So shout out to him. Absolutely fantastic game, and great to see him in the mix, as he's actually scored. Well, he's Adelaide's leading scorer. He's nearly averaging 2 goals a game now.
That's massive.
So for what was a very quiet first half of the season, he's absolutely turned around. But talking about Keane and Worrell, they would star as well. The former keeping Waitman and eventually Buku Kamas. He had unfortunately a nightmare down back. Had to shift forward as Waitman got subbed off as he had another bad game. So they were all kept goalless. And the latter, Worrell, he limited Ugle Hagen's impact. He's had a massive month, but he only managed the 1 goal and was kept pretty low in possession count. And both had 9 and 10 intercepts between them, with Keane going 100% by foot and also having 5 score involvements, all starting with his first possessions. So for me, they were 2 of the stars of the game, despite the Bulldogs' forward dysfunction. Obviously, I mean, like, goal kicking, because their forward pressure was great. With Darcy missing out on a hole with his 1 goal 5 performance, he actually dominated Murray. Murray didn't have a great game. He couldn't keep up with him, and Darcy was taking the marks, but just couldn't convert. As I said, the Tolls did not have a great game. Small forward and winger Lockie McNeil for the Bulldogs had a lot of impact, I will say. 16 disposals, 10 contested possessions, 81% efficiency, 5 intercepts, 1 goal, 1 with 7 score involvements. Other good players, Riley O'Brien, he creamed English in the ruck and limited his possessions enough around the ground to have a pretty solid win. 20 hitouts to advantage, a nice 69% win rate for a total of 58 hitouts. Yep. Ben Keys, the ultimate pigeon, getting goals out the back beautifully. Was great with 3 goals, 1, 10 score involvements from 19 possessions. But still, surprisingly, he was not the Crows' best forward distributor, with that being to the revival man, Riley Thilthorpe. He got 10 score involvements with 3 direct score assists from his 14 possessions. He kicked 2 late goals to fully reward his hard work through the game. And a youngster I want to shout out, Daniel Curtin. He had his first big game of the year and would be pretty hard to drop for the showdown. He got 2 goals after trying hard in the middle for the first 3 quarters as he replaced a slightly banged up Tex. He was subbed off, but was mainly for a poke in the eye, which he got looked at. So he should be back for next week again for the big showdown.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, probably the most impressive thing about this game is, as I said, the Crows rebuffing the Dogs forward line. And yeah, as I said, they're only really playing for pride at the moment, but they, as they hope to get out of the bottom 4, it's not happening for them so far with the Saints getting the win, but they're clearly the better of the 2 teams in terms of form. And yeah, as I said, they are really impressing. Setting the foundation works for 2025s. And for the Dogs, it was sort of the usual loss for them in terms of their losses this year. Bad back half movements. Their defenders getting a bit lost one-on-one at times.
Mm-hmm.
It's the 2-man flaws. But yeah, as I said, it just happened to come up against a forward line that was firing. But either way, I think the Bulldogs are like the ultimate finals wheel spin. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen them so much times this year. They can generate a lot of points. They can leak a lot of points, but you're not overly sure when they're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, as I said, yeah, a bit like Hawthorn, they'll probably be hoping for some nice matchups. Again, if they play in Melbourne enough, they could still do a bit of damage, make a bit of a deep run. I'd imagine they're a good chance to win a game at the very least. But yeah, as I said, they'll want to flesh out a bit of their forward line. Or they'll try and they'll want a game of 3 forward line consistent games. Sorry, a couple to end up the year. To get a bit of momentum. They'll get that with the North Melbourne. One of the games to normally revs up a forward line. So
yeah,
we'll see.
you'd it's definitely a bit of momentum they want the most. Apart from obviously fixing whatever issues that Adelaide broke in this game.
Yeah, as I said, I will say, like, they did do good because they were comprehensively getting beaten. They did fight back a bit. Like, this margin was probably not as dominant not as a reflection of the dominance that Adelaide had. But at least showed the Bulldogs had a lot of fight. They won the inside 50s, by the way, the Bulldogs. But yeah, as I said, and technically one more scoring shot, but yeah, as I said, not being able to convert was the biggest thing. And as I said, it wasn't like like some games where, you do okay in the set shots and have like a poor, what do you call it?
Clearance rate?
General play,
Oh, yeah.
scoring. No, they were just bad at both. So, yeah, unfortunate. A bit of a setback, but yeah, as I said, they should be all right heading into the finals.
Yeah, I think so.
Assuming they make it.
Assuming they make it, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
we know the Doggies can bounce back pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Especially because they don't have any massive key injuries right now that they've solved a couple of their issues, especially down back. But it's just about trying to reinvigorate that forward line just a little bit in preparation for hopefully a finals berth.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I will want to say, like, how impressive Adelaide have been in the back half of the year after looking, pretty dismal. Like, yeah, this season for them has been, like,
a train wreck compared to last season.
Well,
but this second half has bounced back to what they should have been, at least.
Yeah, I don't think it's really been as bad as it has, like, in the win-loss. I think it's, the 2 dips were just so bad.
Yeah.
The start was horrendous. And then when they lost players in the midfield, Rankin being huge, him coming back, he didn't have the, like, most complete game. But geez, he was an X factor. Like, the things he was winning, he was providing pace and good disposal, despite having less possessions than you would normally expect him to.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I said, for the team whose jumper I'm wearing right now, they will be very, very scared of the upcoming showdown because they are a force to be reckoned with in terms of form.
Absolutely. All right.
But yeah, I'll say it is sort of funny that the Bulldogs technically lost to a bottom 4 team, and it just doesn't feel like it. Like, again, this season's just...
This
you know.
season, it really is all over the place.
Yeah.
All right. To round out this round, I'm going to touch on the MRO. No one's actually banned, thankfully, but there were a lot of fines, especially on Saturday. 18 players were fined on Saturday, and the bill to come out of that from the AFL was $42,500, which is insane. A lot of them got fined. I think it was the Hawthorn, no, not the Hawthorn Carlton match. I think it was the Saturday night game. I've already blanked on which one it might have been. But there was a massive brawl that happened, and that pretty much knocked out 10 players right then and there.
Essendon,
that
Gold
one,
Coast.
yeah, Essendon. There was a massive brawl in Essendon Gold Coast. Most of, I think a lot of the fines came from that. But yeah, 18 players in one round is kind of nuts.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's jump over to the ladder, which most people will expect to have not changed all that much, because it actually hasn't changed at all. Oh, hang on, no, round 22 is what I got.
No, you've been tricked.
I did the thing again. Okay, well, to be fair, it hasn't actually changed all that much. It's only the top 8 that have shifted a bit.
Yeah.
So Sydney's still in top position. They're back to being a game in front on 60 points. Port Adelaide jump up to second, GWS jump up to third, and Geelong jump up to fourth, all equaling 56 points and being divided by percentage. The Brisbane Lions drop down to fifth on 54 points, with the draw keeping them just half a game away from the top 4. Fremantle and the Western Bulldogs stay 6th and 7th on 50 and 48 respectively. Hawthorn make it into the top 8. Congratulations to them. They're pretty much going to stay there, but it depends by how much is whether they'll climb super high or not. But they're also on 48 points. Carlton drop out because of them getting dominated by Hawthorn, but also on 48 points, but they lose due to percentage. Essendon dropped to 10th on 46 points with a flat 96 percentage. Collingwood sitting at a neat 11th, 44 points, only pretty much a game out of the 8, but are on 100.1 in terms of percentage, and will definitely need a boost to be if they want to try and steal a top 8 spot. The Gold Coast Suns jump up to 12th on 40 points. Again, there is a slight, very, very slight statistical chance that they could make it. Same with Melbourne, actually. But it's more likely, it's pretty much like 95-5 of whether they're not going to make it. But the Gold Coast Suns are sitting 12th, 40 points, 100.5 percentage. Melbourne down to 13th, 40 points and 97.9 percentage. And then 14th to 18th, completely ruled out of finals, even though we knew this anyway. St. Kilda on 36, Adelaide 34, West Coast on 20, North Melbourne on 12, and Richmond on 8. And let's now jump over to round 23's fixture, starting with a possible Friday night blockbuster, depending on how you look at it with Essendon. But Essendon and Sydney at Marvel Stadium.
Yeah, these games are normally pretty good. Obviously, Essendon... Of all the things, like, Sydney's still looking shaky. What they didn't want was Sydney's midfield waking up, because that will prove a pretty tough matchup. As we know, like, Sydney's defense being shaky, sort of counteracted by the fact that Essendon's defense is shaky. So
yeah,
we might see a shootout, hopefully. Yeah.
Nope. Oh, I lost you. Memento both of us.
I lost Blaze for a second, so I jumped in and out. But
good?
Hopefully he's back.
We good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, good. Let's keep
All
going.
right.
Essendon Sydney.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is I will be interested on how Nick Bryan, the ruckman, sort of secondary ruck for Essendon, goes against Grundy. Because I've been sort of impressed with the way he's gone against some big matchups.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Darcy on the first. 2 weeks ago. Jared Witts, he had to pinch it against. So Yeah, as I said, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, yeah, I just want a high scoring shootout, but I think you got to tip Sydney.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go
Thank
Sydney
you.
here as well, especially with their midfield waking up. Again, if you don't put a
Yeah.
tag on Heaney, it's either you either tag Heaney or you tag Golden. It's impossible to tag both, and one of them is going to completely dominate your midfield if you don't try and quell at least one of them.
Yeah, and the fact that Nick Cox goes down, like, he's probably not going to go on Goulden specifically. But the other threat that they could probably put up there is, of course, Nick Blakey. If they play him on the ring, rather than as a defender, that height could have been matched up by Nick Cox, but not to be. As they're going to probably play someone a bit young. It's like what? And I play Harrison Jones, Archie Roberts. It's not really.
Would you, for
Although I'd have-
Essendon, would you put Dersma on Golden?
I mean, yeah, I guess.
Maybe not as like a tagging sort of role, but he can keep up with him.
Is he there though? I thought he was injured.
I thought I'm pretty sure I saw. I don't know if he played last week, but I definitely know he was playing at some point. He might have it might have been back out injured.
Yeah, I think he's injured at the moment. So
that's rough.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said. So but yeah, as I said, it's just sort of. I don't think the matchup's there for him. In a few aspects, this is why I'm pretty confident in them being it. Yeah, Zane Dersma out 3 to 4 weeks with a hamstring.
Oh, that's rough. Yeah, he's not playing till next season. That's unlucky.
Yeah, you would like he would be the sort of person because
he would literally be perfect to take on Golden, but
yeah, but they're just not going to have it. So,
not meant to be.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Fair enough. All right. Now this is an even more interesting matchup: the Gold Coast Suns versus the Melbourne Demons on the Gold Coast.
The battle of the slim final soaps.
For the Suns, you want this to be an absolute bloodbath. They need the percentage badly, and Melbourne aren't looking too great, apart from a few little bits and pieces here and there. So you wanna hope that they can just steal a win here, maybe high percentage, but I think Melbourne will definitely make it very, very close.
Yeah, I think they can steal a win, but I would not see this being a high scoring game.
No, but feasibly the only way that they're gonna make finals is if it's high score. If they can get it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, Gold Coast still have to be here. And look, Melbourne has collapsed before, but as I said, if Melbourne play as they did last week, they will put a lot of pressure on the Gold Coast. As I said, their defensive midfield pressure, against Port Adelaide, they'll want to do the same. As I said, sometimes that's where you can catch Gold Coast with that midfielder forward link. And as I said, they've got the matchup defensively, even if Mac Andrews plays forward, to nullify some of that. So, yeah, as I said, I still think in terms of free-flowing movement, Gold Coast might be able to outrun Melbourne. So, yeah, I'm not actually sure who I tipped this match. I'm a bit undecided so far. I might go Melbourne, but I might be suckered in by how nice their defense was against Port.
For me, I'm probably going to lean towards the Suns. Half because of the fact that it is on the Gold Coast, and the fact that they don't really have any major injuries anymore, other than their co-captain Tuck Miller, that they're still missing. So for the most part, I think the Suns could 100% take the win here. But again, it might also depend on just ins and outs because these teams are so close in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
All right. GWS.
Actually, Tuck Miller is apparently possibly back this week.
Oh, he might be free? Ooh.
Watch it.
That might sway the tip a bit more. We'll see.
We'll see.
All right. GWS versus Freo in Sydney.
Yeah.
At NG Stadium.
Right. Well, the first thing that's going to be pretty obvious. Like, Freo are going to hope that they get some of their forward line players back.
You definitely want to try and get. Is Tracy back, or is he out for a bit longer?
Yeah, I said. He was a test this week, so you would imagine, unless anything's flared up, they probably were cautious to him, knowing that they want him for the last bit of the season.
Hmm.
As I said, even though you risk the Geelong game, like, you got to back yourself into, win one of these two games. So,
Absolutely.
in terms of belief, as I said, they might go 0-3, but they
Yeah.
want to believe.
For Freo, you definitely want Darcy and Tracy in if you're going to take on GWS.
Yeah, exactly. So first things first, that's out the bat. You watch out for the team matchups. In terms of the head-to-head battle, like, it's very hard to see because, as I said,
Both teams are
Freo
fairly
have been
evenly
one of-
matched, just overall.
Yeah. Yeah, Freo have probably, like, week to week the more impressive midfield. But those lapses in these last half of the seasons, like, we've seen GWS just run over the top of teams. In the last 2 weeks. Like, they haven't been beating teams from straight out the gate. They've been having to come back. And unfortunately for Freo, they've had a few times of losing the lead. So you really just... Freo can't have this be a comeback loss. I think that will be a heartbreaker for them.
Yeah.
I maintain this is a 50-50 game. Despite the GWS Giants having that win streak, I will tip them because, win streak at home, top 4, you got it. But, yeah, as I said, there's still a fair chunk to like. The other thing is GWS defense. It seems to be getting a bit more to where you would expect it to be. Sam
I was
Taylor
going to say that. I think
getting...
I think the matchup defensive wise, I think the Giants do win out. If Tracy is
Yeah.
back, I think they'll make it a much harder matchup for the Giants backline. But currently, as it stands, I think the Giants do just have the better functional defensive structure.
And it's probably a good time to note, like, Jesse Hogan is looking to be the favourite for the Coleman now. He's on the lead with, I know it's just 2 goals above Kerno.
Yeah, I think it's still pretty close, but if Kerno's gone out, he might run away with it.
Yeah, well, exactly. And, he's got a matchup against a defensively... Actually, no, he'll probably get Brendan Cox. He's been solid, but again, like, Freo's 1-on-1 defense hasn't exactly been as great since Spears is out, so he might be looking for a few against his former side.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get a bag out of it, you take a bag out of it, but bags aren't that hard. Pretty tough to come by in top 8 games. So it'll just be a strong pressure game. You expect both Greens and Toby Bedford to play huge roles in that hard pressure. Whitfield,
Well, actually, that's
Callahan.
Who do you think Bedford will tag?
I'd like to think Sarong, but I think Young might be the more influential player overall.
Yeah, because that's the interesting thing. Because, like, of all the players you want restricted, I actually think, put Young in. Because GWS have some good small defenders. So if Sarong does go forward, I don't think he'll be as loose as he was against Geelong.
Again, for the most part, this is all going to depend on whether Tracy's in or not, as to where Sarong is going to match up.
Yeah. But yeah, as I said, so I'd actually be inching towards Young, but it'll be interesting to see nonetheless.
Yeah, this is 100% coin flip game right now. Watch the ins and outs. And yeah, if Freo get, especially if Darcy's okay to play, and Tracy's in, watch out. Freo could be massively dangerous in this fight.
Yep.
All right, Collingwood and Brisbane at the MCG, a game that Collingwood could be on a huge run for. Again, they're still trying to make a premiership defense. For Brisbane, the shock horror loss to GWS at home will spur them on to, especially like at with a game at the MCG, a ground that they need more experience in. You'd like to think that this could be season decider, essentially, for both teams.
Yeah. It's going to be tough for Collingwood because it's not exactly a matchup I think that favours them. Brisbane are so good at locking the ball inside your opponent's forward 50. And for Collingwood, they sort of need possession because their forward line does struggle a bit to convert from their entries. Like, they're not a control team, but you know what I mean? Like,
no,
the intercept game
they're a
would have
disposal
to be
intercept
on
team.
Yeah, exactly. To combat some of the forward line prowess and pressure of Brisbane.
Absolutely.
Which still could happen. And Nick Dacos will probably have a bit more free reign than what he's been having the last few weeks getting tagged, or last half of the season, I should say. So I look for him to lift a bit more. Lockie Neal probably on the flip side, probably has a bit more free run. Collingwood don't tend to tag as much. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how like the battle of the forward pressure goes. But yeah, Brisbane probably have a bit of a proof in the pudding that they've just been probably the best forward pressure team all year. So I'll back them in.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. As much as head to head, I do think Collingwood can make this close. I think Brisbane just have the better structure overall, and the better game plan. I think their game plan is really, really good. It doesn't match up well against other teams like GWS, for example. GWS which ran all over them going later into that game. But I think in terms of the Collingwood matchup, their overall game plan and game structure is better. You just want to hope that their forwards are going to be firing, especially Danaher and Cameron. Danaher did perform all right last week, but you want to see more from him, especially with Hipwood still being out.
Yeah, I didn't see the stats. I think it was just Danaher missing, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
there were a lot of shots on goal, both just on the run and from set that hit the post. It was very comedic at the time, but in terms of overall, it was not a good look for them, and it just gave the Giants so much space to work with.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that just sometimes happens with Brisbane, especially if you are a forward pressure team. You tend to be a bit more on edge in a weird way.
Yeah, so I think we both want to hope that Brisbane bounce back pretty strongly for this and try and secure a top 4 spot.
I'd be pretty happy if Collingwood win, but yeah.
Oh yeah, this could be one of the games of the round.
Yeah, Brisbane firing puts out a very exciting finals prospect in terms of entertaining finals matchups. So
not to mention, this is also a grand final rematch.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So there's a little bit of rivalry carrying on from last season for this one, even though I think this is actually the second time this season these two teams have faced.
Yeah. I think it was round 2, where I think it was one of where Collingwood won. Oh, what? No, it wasn't round 2. No, because they were both on losing streaks. So I think Brisbane won.
I can't remember who won back then. It was too long ago.
Too long ago. Season's too long. Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're both swaying Brisbane there, but it could be very close. All right, showdown time. I think we're both leaning towards Port Adelaide, just based on just current statistics. However, with what we saw from Adelaide against the Doggies, Port could lose this, and it will ruin their top 2 chances.
I've had more faith when we were up against Sydney and Carlton than the showdown. I did not expect anything.
It's always something about the showdown that just invigorates whichever team is at the bottom of the ladder.
And look, like Adelaide will be gunning for getting Port 0-2 again, I should say. Sort of derailed Port's top 2 aspirations.
I think if Port lose this, there's pretty much an 80-something% chance that they won't make it back to top 2.
And as I said, obviously, this could even derail top 4 with the way the season's going. So who knows how much damage they could do. As I said, you can't put logic into this. Just tip who you want.
Yeah, this one's literally just a tip from the heart.
Just gut, exactly.
All right, let's move on to a slightly more convincing game then. St Kilda versus Geelong at Marvel Stadium. Now, Geelong don't have the greatest track record here. They like a lot of Melbourne-based teams that don't commonly play here. They don't like this ground, but they are in the better form overall. St Kilda, they want to play spoiler to the last 2 teams that they're facing off against,
and keep out the bottom 4.
Yeah, like ideally they don't want to finish 15th to 18th, but they want to ruin the party for other teams, especially a team like Geelong, who all season long have been just trying to keep top 4. They had that harsh run earlier in the season. They've come back into some pretty solid form and managed to make that top 4 push. But yes, St Kilda definitely want to play spoiler to it, and I think it's possible for them. I think head to head, there are some interesting matchups there, like your Sinclairs and your Steels up against your Tom Stewarts and your Brad Close and your
Yeah, or like Atkins maybe. I'm not sure. I think you put like a harder nut like Atkins on Stewart. Let the other mids run free.
um forward line wise, I think obviously Geelong definitely have the better forward line. I'm not even gonna try and argue that. But I think St Kilda's defensive efforts
Yeah.
are a very good matchup for them. Especially in keeping Cameron quiet. I definitely think they're gonna put a lot of numbers on Cameron and try and just force the ball to ground a lot more than try and beat them in the air. Because again, the roof is closed at Marvel, so there's like no sort of weather effects that could affect this game. So it'll easily just be an air battle.
Yeah.
And they just want to completely nullify Cameron's influence there.
And I think also protecting that middle of the ground, because Geelong obviously do, like, they like to go wide and then go back in. If they can stop that in movement, they should fare okay. Because as I said, like, you can't stop Jeremy Cameron running to the boundary line.
No,
and you can't, unfortunately, you just can't stop him getting those free goals. Absolutely insane from the boundary this year. But, Cal Wookie's more than capable of at least limiting him to that.
Absolutely. He's been very influential in that backline this season.
Yeah. And they got players that can move up. And even some stuff on the wing. Mason Wood, I think, will be a very influential player in terms of St Kilda's transition. Because, as I said, Geelong sometimes a bit scrappy, so they should get, with the Saints defense, they should get an opportunity to move the ball from halfback. So, as I said, but again, with that forward line, it's just a toss-up. They either need to really restrict Geelong or just find scoring for out of nowhere, like they did against the Tigers. But the Geelong aren't the Tigers. Although, one of my matchups, again, Geelong aren't that solid, so maybe there's something in it. But
Geelong definitely have holes that St Kilda could exploit. It'll be a battle of the coaches, I think, in this one. It won't just be purely player influential.
How St Kilda moves that ball from halfback and how Geelong looks to penetrate St Kilda's top 4 defense still.
So in terms of tip, I am swaying Geelong. Just numbers wise, I think it's a fairly obvious tip, but St Kilda could absolutely play spoiler this week.
Yeah.
All right.
Probably the more likely of the big upsets to happen.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely more. It's on one hand, it's definitely like a 50-50 game to some degree.
70-30.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Let's be real.
All right, Sunday games. The Doggies versus North Melbourne at Marvel. You go Doggies by far. However, North have shown some very, very positive signs. So they could at least try and make it a close game, but I think just in terms just baseline, you'd go the Dogs.
You would expect like nearly a 170 point-ish combined total for this game. As in both teams, of course, put together. It'll be a high scoring affair. You'd expect the Bulldogs would just have the weight of numbers behind them. North won't have the luxury of getting the ball inside 50s like they did against the Eagles because the Bulldogs tend to feast in the middle. And as I said, the ball will be going probably back to center a lot because North's defense is what we've been talking about all year.
It's it's the worst part of the team, but it has gotten better as the season's gone on. There is still holes in it, of course, but
and North Melbourne's transition has gotten better. So if the Bulldogs do miss, they are more likely to swing the ball from back to forward line,
absolutely,
compared to the first half of the year.
Absolutely. And, as long as they're able to kick it down the throat of Nick Larkey, he will convert, and they will absolutely make it a strong shootout, as they did against Carlton.
Yeah, Larkey will want to kick a goal bag after being pretty shut down. He's always hungry for goals and to perform, so he'll be gunning.
But overall, we sway to the Dogs. It's kind of a no-brainer on that one. But we hope North make it close and make it interesting.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, they could play spoiler, but they won't. Well, more likely than not, they won't.
Look,
but they could.
If North Richmond and West Coast won, I would be the happiest person.
Oh yeah, looking at these matchups.
Yeah. I don't think it's probably going to happen.
No, it's probably not. Although, for some reason, West Coast do have better odds against Carlton than they do than any of the other matchups.
Again, just wait till the team list.
Uh,
See how bad the damage is for that one.
yeah, true. All right, Hawthorn and Richmond at the MCG. Um, this is a no-brainer. Even as a Richmond supporter, this is a no-brainer. You just go the Hawks flat out,
Yeah.
and there's not much more to really
Like,
say about it.
We're saying Richmond's tired. Hawthorn's got some of the best pace in the league. It's just it's a bad matchup at a very bad time.
The Hawks definitely want to make this a bloodbath. They need the percentage to try and make a play for top 4 if they want to aim that high, or at least get to 5th and get that fifth or 6th to get that home final.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's a bit of interest in like the Meek versus Nankervis.
I'm definitely interested in that
but...
matchup. I do love the ruck matchups.
Yeah,
but I think in terms of just overall play, Hawthorn are going to win out by far. There's nothing. There's no really other decent matchup you can comment on.
Yeah, I really can't say much about this. Yeah, it's just Hawthorn.
Pretty much. All right. Optus Stadium, Sunday twilight game. West Coast Eagles and Carlton.
Well, West Coast have got to put a positive mindset because 3 in a row would be absolutely fantastic.
It would be huge for their season.
You could say about the injuries, but yeah, as I said, to get that caretaker coach, like obviously you never want to get too loud because we have seen like caretaker coach get wins at the end of the year and not end up that great.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, I guess what they want to see is a better contest out of the middle. Because Carlton are vulnerable there. They're as good as they are generating offense, they leak the same amount.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to get the ball forward. And as I said, and expose just any of the injuries that happen, It sucks for Carlton. They've been digging into the reserves all year. They've probably, of the top teams, except for Brisbane with their ACL injuries, I'll say Carlton are the next. Had the most adversity injury-wise to go through.
Or at least in terms of a team that is still vying for top 8.
Yeah. You could argue.
Otherwise, you'd put Richmond on that list.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's what I meant, like, of the contenders.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hawthorn too, but that was more pre-season. Like, a lot of their stuff they knew at the time, so...
This one
Carlton are limping.
Genuinely depend on the ins and outs.
Yeah, exactly. And, as I mentioned, like, if Carlton don't have some of that forward matchup, like, if they don't have Connor and Mackay, like, we've seen the Eagles' defense be solid. And, so we might see a Mitch matchup, a McGovern matchup.
Oh, that would be so good.
Ooh, tasty.
That could make this the spiciest match of the round, actually.
Exactly.
Like, who cares about the showdown? The McGovern matchup is where it's at.
The McGovern off, yeah.
It's definitely possible. If McKerner... that's their name together. If Kerner and Mackay are out, McGovern might have to push forward rather than playing back. And he could be matched up on his brother.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, as I said, so they've got no Silvani to go for. He can sometimes, I mean, he's been out all season, but you know what I mean? Like, he's that small that can play tall that they're really missing out on now. So they're on third string sort of players that you want playing that role. So, look for West Coast Eagles to try and generate a lot of intercepts. So even if Carlton do move the ball forward, West Coast has got to try and move the ball, which isn't their MO, but it might generate enough inside 50s for them to win, because Carlton's defense is still on paper all right. Depends how Boyd picks up, but if West Coast get the weighted numbers, I will actually edge towards them, but there's no way to possibly predict this game without seeing the team sheets.
Yeah, absolutely. To know how much damage has been caused to Carlton and whether that'll impact whether they'll even have a forward line at all.
Or even motivation-wise.
Yeah, motivation-wise, they want top 8. They want to actually play finals. But are they gonna have the pieces to be able to make it?
like that many injuries in 1 week. Like, because as a team.
Yeah, it sucks. To
Yeah.
have to play against a team like Hawthorn, the most exciting team in the comp, with pretty much no bench, is massively demoralizing. And
Exactly.
you want to bounce back. Absolutely, they want to bounce back, but whether they're going to even have the players to be able to bounce back strong against the West Coast side that has shown good promise despite being bottom 4.
Yeah, and especially at home. So, yeah, we'll see. But again, as I said, it's just a bit sad, really, for Carlton.
Especially after all season long, they've been very good. Obviously, had minor dips here and there, but they've been one of them.
Yeah,
they've been a really, really fun team to watch for most of the season. It's just
fun team
very
to
unlucky
watch.
for them.
They've one of the hardest schedules in the AFL, and as I mentioned, it's just they face the adversity, and despite what I think will be a very good season, like we're looking at them missing with like a 13-win season. It's just it is what it is. It is like scheme of the game. It is funny if it does happen to Carlton, but they don't deserve
for
it.
this season to be this close. It's ridiculous that a team with 13 wins, maybe even 14 wins, could still miss the 8.
Yeah, because I said like 12 is already missing, and that's what you expect. Like 9 times out of 10 to get you in there. So
it shows that the season is too long.
yeah, that too, I guess.
So baseline for that game, look for the ins and outs, because that's what's gonna really matter for this. All right, I think that actually does it for this week. We were going to touch on our All Australian picks, but we might do a bonus video for that to go out later in the week, maybe over the weekend.
Yeah,
because I'm too tired to do it now, and we might not have time to do it next week. So I think a bonus
there was
video.
too many good games.
Yeah, there's too much to talk about this late in the season. So we might put it out as a bonus video, because we might not have. It might be too late to talk about it once the pre-finals buy comes in. We will obviously let you know about that on the socials when we do that. Otherwise, go check them out. Also, if you haven't already, go check mine out as well. I'm streaming a lot more frequently now on my Twitch. It's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate anyone who stops by and just comes to hang out. And I think that will do us. So thank you all so much. And we will see you all next week for episode 26. So until then, hope you all take care, and we will see you later. Bye.